Why didn't the Democrats take a better advantage of this opportunity this election cycle?
I think we're ready to call another race.
Okay.
I believe the Missouri Times can now project that Attorney General Andrew Bailey will be elected to the job Governor Parson appointed him to a little over 2 years ago. He won a very tough primary. He defeated essentially the entire New York and Washington elites all in one stab.
And a hell of a candidate in Will Sharf.
Very good candidate, but Bailey won every single county. The old Missouri farm boy did pretty well, and now it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear by the margins he will be returned to the office of Attorney General. And I have to say, I think it's no longer a secret. Sometimes you get to make these insider calls like, "Oh, look at me, I know more." I don't think it's some kind of gutsy, bold call to say we have a future potential national star here in Missouri in the Attorney General, Andrew Bailey.
I think so. And regardless of what happens on a national level, I think it's win-win for Andrew Bailey. Because if Donald Trump wins, well, Donald Trump wins. And Andrew Bailey can turn his attention to fixing issues here in Missouri especially. And then if Kamala Harris wins, then Andrew Bailey can continue his fight against federal overreach. And I think that fight from Bailey will be even more fortified if Kamala Harris wins tonight.
We are now joined people in Missouri politics, Congresswoman Ann Wagner. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. I'm thrilled to be with you, Scott. John, how are you? Happy election night, finally.
Thank you. You have been out on the doors this fall. Every time I look at the internet, you're knocking on some door.
We are. I will tell you what, we've done probably in the last few weeks another 15,000. I always say no lonely victories, and we're trying to help 3 really targeted races here in Missouri 2nd District. Phil Olerkings, Brad Criss, and our Senate district, which is David Gregory, which I hear is trending very well. So I'm pleased about that. We not seeing many numbers at this point in time, but we're confident. So,
Congresswoman, you ran a really unique race against a unique candidate, Ray Hartman, who many folks know. You spent decades, along with many of our viewers, watching Ray Hartman on the Donnybrook Show. In the spirit of bipartisanship, Ann, Ray gave up that seat to run against you. Would you write a letter of recommendation to get Ray Hartman back on KETC in Donnybrook?
I don't think he would go for that, but whatever. I'm happy to be bipartisan. I always am. I've made passed 8 pieces of legislation into law in the 118th Congress. So we're workhorses, not show horses. We get things done in Missouri 2nd District. So I'm always pleased to reach across the aisle and work together. But I think we're pretty confident that we're going to be victorious here this evening. But as I said, this is really about the team effort and getting things done for everyone. And we had a great fly around with our, I should say, more bus around, given this weather. I think we've had 6 inches of rain in the last 36 hours or so, and we've had signs up. I've been working polls from Warren County all the way through St. Charles, Franklin, and the 2/3 of St. Louis County that makes up the 2nd Congressional District. So we're excited. We ran a real race. I take nothing for granted ever. And I always say you gotta play to win. And we had our commercials up, radio ads, a lot of mail that we actually got delivered. Calls, door to door, streaming, you name it. We work it hard, and we do the good old fashioned grassroots work that I feel like a lot of campaigns have gotten away from. So, but we're out there.
So tell me about the national mood. I mean, I'm sure you've got your fellow members of Congress probably on some group text. So far tonight, are you encouraged? Are you discouraged? And when do you think we might know who the next president of the United States will be?
I don't know. I'm telling you what, but every metric that I have seen, it is trending right. I've got to tell you, we're very, very encouraged that President Trump is going to be reelected here, and we hope then that he's going to bring a number of these House races with him. So some of them are not dependent upon the presidential race. We've got a number in California and New York. I've gone on the road with our leadership team, both with Speaker Mike Johnson and Leader Steve Scalise. I've been in Arizona, in Nevada, in California, Iowa, Wisconsin, and some are a little tied to the presidential, and some are not. So we've got seats in New York and California that we're going to be watching very, very closely. I think we're obviously going to take the U.S. Senate. I think Trump wins. And the House is going to be I think a small margin one way or another. I'll be honest with you. And I believe Republicans are going to be victorious tonight, but I still think it's going to be a relatively small margin in the House. But it will allow us, if we get it, to do things like budget reconciliation on tax cuts and a lot of things for the border and to really restore freedoms across the board. Biden enacted about 90 executive orders on day one, and we look forward to repealing each and every one of those and moving in a direction that the American people, I think, want us to.
So in Senate District 15, you have David Gregory. It could not be tighter. 60,000 votes in, separated. Separated by less than 1,000. That's a tight race. But Amendment 3 in St. Louis County, so far, 250,000 votes in. 67-32 in favor of Amendment 3. You've ran a lot of statewide efforts like this. Where do you want to see that number? Because, I mean, the St. Louis County vote's obviously going to pass Amendment 3. Where do you start to get worried at a percentage that maybe the rest of the state can't catch that up and pass it?
Well, we saw a strong surge by the no on Amendment 3, but it was towards the end, a very strong surge. And so the question is, were we able to get it in soon enough in order to make a real difference here? I think the real story there is going to be, whether that money came in too late in order to stop it. I'm obviously a no on Amendment 3. I do believe it will pass here in St. Louis County and some of the other urban, more suburban areas. But we've got a lot that's outstanding in the state of Missouri here. I mean, the record turnout and the early vote has been the real story of this election. I think not just here in Missouri, but across the country. And I think it really is because Donald Trump said, great, everyone get out there, vote early. And for the first time, we've had no fault voting here in the state of Missouri. So didn't have to make yourself a liar when you went in to vote and say you were going to be sick or absent or whatever. So that bodes well for Republicans, and they got in there and voted. I went today. We had news crews in tow, and we walked right in. And I worked a number of the polling places today, and there may have been lines inside the building, but there really were not many lines that were wrapping around anywhere. It was good to see.
Truth be told, I really do think the state does a disservice to St. Louis. It's not fair to have someone ask someone to wait in line 3 hours to vote. If you're working and you have kids, that's not real. I don't think that's the election board's fault. I just think that if you weren't going to have more polling places, early voting made a lot of sense. I honestly don't even think it's partisan. I know that normally easier access to voting is an issue Democrats advocate for, but to me, that person who's got kids and a job and he can spare an hour, but he can't spend 3 hours. That guy has a good chance of being a Republican. Maybe he showed up and vote this year, and we're going to see a different makeup of the state's political map.
It'll be very interesting, but I think the lesson learned here in terms of early voting is going to be they're going to have more satellite locations.
Yeah.
People really prefer it. They like to go on their own terms, at their own time. I mean, they've got kids that are in school and playing sports. They've got jobs. They got extracurricular activities. They've got a lot of stuff going on. So they want to have that access, as you said, Scott. But I think that they are definitely going to have to open up more sites, especially as we saw in places like St. Charles, Missouri, where there were only a couple. And I agree. People should not be waiting 2 to 3 hours to vote. And today, on Election Day, they did not have to wait. But that's because a large percentage of the vote was already in. So I think, it'll take them a little bit to hit their stride on this, but they're learning as they go. And now this isn't just about Election Day. This is about election season.
Yeah.
And if Missouri is going to continue to do the no-fault voting, then they're going to have to open up more satellite locations so that that mom with a stroller isn't sitting out there with her kid, or that worker's got it has to get to the job isn't going to be looking at his or her watch and saying, gosh, I just can't stand here anymore. So that was my only real frustration with this election cycle. So, but we're learning. It's getting better, and I think people really like the early voting.
Congresswoman Wagner, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being so much better with technology than David Barklage. My God.
Oh, God, Barklage. What did he give you a little trouble with the back and forth there, huh?
Well, I'm not sure he fully knows how to work. I mean, he can do it on the show, but I think under the bright lights of an election night, I think he kind of choked it. He was in his office. Of course, he had on his cute little cufflinks, and he was all dolled up. But he still couldn't get his camera working quite right.
Yeah.
He can run races, but technology, I don't know. We'll see. Congresswoman, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It's thrilled to be here with you all. I think we're going to see some good, strong victories here tonight, so stay tuned.
Okay, thank you so much. I believe, John Combest, we can call one of the biggest Senate races of the night. Okay. In Clay County, you had Maggie Nurnberg, absolute bright star on the Democratic side. Knew she was running to replace Lauren Arthur, who's very well regarded. She a leader in the state Senate. She's now in the state, I believe. Maybe she moved over to the Texas. She did an appointment somewhere. I think it was the Labor Commission, actually. Right. Jerry Nolte, very prominent person in Clay County, former state legislator.
And quite a following in Clay County as well.
Absolutely. He is known as Jerry. We interviewed him on the show. All you could see was people stopping behind him, waving at him. But now I think we can project, the Missouri Times can project, that Representative Maggie Nurnberg will be elected to the Missouri State Senate. That would be the 11th member so far tonight of the Democratic caucus. That would be a hold for the Democrats, but a very competitive one, adding to Stephen Weber. That puts the Democrats on 11. That's the most they've had in some time.
And let's not forget the Weber seat is technically a flip because it belongs to Caleb Rowden as well. So a lot of folks overlook that.
So as we look forward, we can now, I think, make a couple more projections here. In the state treasurer's race, it does appear as though while right now you can see some of the margins. If you're following along with us online, you'll be able to tell some of these margins. And I always want to know how you I saw somebody projected Donald Trump won Missouri like 2 seconds in.
Yeah, right. 7:04 p.m.
Yeah, I think that's to say projection, but I want to see little numbers. I've done this a long time. I think you want to see when these urban places first come in. You want to see what's the margin the Democrat needs to run it up so big they can't be caught. That didn't happen in the state treasury. Very good candidate, Mark Osmak. If you want to talk about somebody that could win a seat for the Democrats, if Mark Osmak ever ran in the right seat, in the right election, he is an absolute political talent. I don't think it was in the last of him, but tonight we can safely say the Missouri Times can project the state treasurer, Vivek Malik, will be returned to office in a pretty convincing statewide win. Vivek Malik, a very impressive man with a great story.
And let's not forget, Vivek Malik has become the first person of color to be elected statewide in the state of Missouri. You think of all the years the Democrats ran Missouri in the 80s and 90s and were never able to put a black Democrat or a person or any person of color on their ticket and get them past the finish line.
So when we talk about these statewide races, you wonder if anybody's going to be able to get 3 or 4 points ahead of the pack.
Yeah.
If it's possible, Bailey probably ran the strongest on primary election night. He ran through the tape strongest. I wonder if somebody else will be able to come in and say, did Vivek Malik outdo the field by 5 points? I'm not feeling that, but I think that's one of the quirks we have to see. Is there some reason why David Wassinger's name hits better than one of the other statewide? And the people watching it closely are those 4.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also think with David Wassinger has the advantage of not only did he spend a lot of money in the primary, but you naturally have roll-off on the ballot. So people that vote for governor might not vote for lieutenant governor. And as the ballot gets longer, folks will roll off. So I would predict, Scott, if I had to, that David Wassinger would get the second most amount of votes among that Republican ticket.
But we can make another projection here. The Missouri Times can now project that Denny Hoskins, from Warrensburg, Missouri, old James Kirkpatrick territory, will actually be elected Missouri Secretary of State. How about that? A guy who lives in the same town as the Kirkpatrick Library on the campus of the University of Central Missouri, Denny Hoskins, red jacket guy.
And here's what I think. You know who the biggest winner in early voting is, Scott?
Who's that?
Denny Hoskins. And I'll tell you why. Never before have we seen so many people fixated on elections. Now, mainstream media and even some Republicans mocked Denny Hoskins when he said we should not only have paper ballots, but we should move in a direction of hand counting. The question I would have is, if folks throughout the state, some of them cast their ballots 2 weeks ago, presumably those votes have been sitting in a warehouse somewhere, it makes Denny Hoskins' argument for hand counting just a little bit more feasible.
Yeah, I mean, can't you do both?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, you could have a paper trail to audit, but you can count them with a. I mean, it doesn't. I actually think counting them through a computer twice is better than hand counting them, because if you have some discrepancies, you can always come back and hand count the things.
Sure.
You can audit them a month later or whatever. But I do think the longer you draw out an election, like in Nevada, the more whether it's corrupt or not, people think it is.
Yeah, the appearance of impropriety. Right.
I think. I do think now we could say we can begin to put together a couple of the state Senate races here in the state. I think we could say that the current Senate Minority Leader, Doug Beck, will be returned to the Missouri State Senate with a healthy majority out of South County, St. Louis. I tell you what, there's no finer guy in politics than Doug Beck. If you had to pick a guy just to hang out with, he'd be in your top 5, no doubt.
You get the feeling that they don't make Democrats like Doug Beck anymore. It's in the mold of like a Jay Nixon, a guy you would actually...
If they did, they'd win more races.
Absolutely.
I think we can also project that Mike Henderson will be elected to the Missouri State Senate, educator from the Lead Belt, from North St. Francis County, as I understand, the birthplace of legends. Mike Henderson representing the Lead Belt. This was a district that was drawn, I think, with him in mind. He won a tough primary against Sidney Buckeye Courtway. I think Mike Henderson will walk in day one as one of the real statesmen of the body.
And one of the folks who looks a little bit more for collaboration and compromise rather than a guy that's a bomb thrower.
As we come through here, there's several of these races that I think we can begin to project. The next one, I think we could go down the line here. It's safe to say with just a little bit of votes out of the city, that we can pretty safely project that Steve Roberts will be returned to the Missouri State Senate. It was so funny. People that live on Twitter, when he ran against Cori Bush, the pearl clutching, he was done, it was over.
Yeah.
Nobody even filed against it.
It's a great example of the fact that elections are not held on Facebook or Twitter or TikTok. And you might have an aggressive, extreme minority that can't stand a person, but that's not necessarily real life, Scott.
Okay, so I believe we have a guest here. I think we are going to be joined by, is it Hannah Beers Sutton that's going to join us from HRCC from the election night event over there. Hannah, thanks for making the time.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And I think maybe Hannah can hear us, but we cannot hear her. So just so everyone knows, they're having a big event just down the street here where they're all lined up together. Now I think we can hear. Is that Hannah? Are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. So far, I guess all of the anxiety and the how do you predict the crystal ball? It does kind of look like right now it's a bit of a jump ball with some of the. Are you encouraged or discouraged right now at 8:30 on election night?
You know, honestly, I think right now we're exactly where it's to be. So many of our seats are 50-50 seats and decided within of 100 and 200 votes. So we're looking approximately where I thought we would be. Do you feel confident that Bill Faulkner, who's on our tough seat, will be back next session? Early for good for Bill Allen. So we're tracking those.
You know, Hannah, here at this desk on This Week in Missouri Politics, folks had been guessing all year long how big the Democrat victories would be on election night. Some folks sat here and said it would be 7 or 8 seats. It looks like that number will be a little bit smaller. Now, you and Dallas Ernst put together a heck of a team. You had outstanding fundraising. Besides fundraising, what was it that kept Republicans keeping more seats than the Democrats expected to pick up?
You know, that's a great question, and thank you very much. We have worked hard, but I think only it comes down to the candidates. At the end of the day, we have better candidates. I think our guys outwork, outraise, outspend the Democrats second of the day. And people like Chris, people like Allen, people like Melanie Stinnett know their districts, they know their constituents, and they're out there working. So, you know, I give the credit to them. And then also to our amazing leader, almost to be Speaker, John Patterson. You know, he knows his caucus and he knows what it takes to raise money and to get work done. I really appreciate him. So, team effort, we have the best people. We have the best people. And we're looking forward to seeing what.
So, Hannah, the last question. I think we're having a little trouble with our connection here. I've always felt like coming into tonight, losing 5 seats would be a good night. Ashley Awney, the incoming Democrat minority leader, told me a gain of 5 would be right where she's hoping to be. You limit that damage, there's got to be a lot of champagne popping and excitement over there at your election night party.
You know, I don't think there's ever a moment, and if we lose caucus members, that I'm going to feel like celebrating, because I get to know these people and they're so important to me. But I think there are 2 types of people who are in this industry after being in it for about 10 years. There's people who like to talk, and there's people who get things done. I think at the end of the night, which one the Republicans are.
Nice. Hannah Beers, thank you so much. Hope you enjoy the evening.
Let's hope.
Thank you so much. That was Hannah Beers Sutton with the House Republican Campaign Committee. I mean, if she can limit the damage to 5 seats, I know nobody wants to see their colleagues lose. I understand that that no one wants to see anybody lose, but still, I think they in all reality, they had to do a hell of a job just to lose those few seats.
And what it also underscores is the fact that we've talked for many months about the fact of what kind of damage will Amendment 3 do to House Republican candidates. And the answer is what you and others have said might happen, which is you have folks who do vote yes on Amendment 3 and still vote for their local Republican because they know them.
Doesn't make sense. I think we can call some more state Senate races. I believe we can call Mike Moon will be returning back to the Missouri State Senate. Mike Moon from Southwest Missouri, quite conservative, one of the nicer people you'll ever meet in politics. He'll be returning to the state Senate. I think we can also probably look over at Senator Bratton's district. You know, he had a very tough 3-way primary.
It was.
But he came through it quite strong. And then I think he spent most of his time working on Amendment 3 this fall.
Yeah, I think so. And let's not forget, too, Mike Moon also had a primary that he needed to emerge from this summer as well.
We can project, the Missouri Times can now project that Rick Bratton will be reelected to the state Senate with a pretty healthy margin. As we flip through here, there's a little bit of vote trickling in. It looked like Adam Schnelting with 6 precincts in doing quite well in the 23rd. He's doing very good. I never thought he was going to lose that race. Some folks thought it'd be a little tighter than others. What did you think?
Well, I thought that, frankly, I think a lot of us were surprised in the primary. I think that Phil Cristofanelli was the odds-on favorite there. I think if you're the Freedom Caucus, you have to be ecstatic about having a right-wing guy who's ideologically aligned with you coming to join the caucus.
I would agree with you. And Rick is actually the chair of the Freedom Caucus. So the Freedom Caucus, chaired by Rick Bratton. Let's talk about that going forward. I interviewed Drew Damp. Probably the most interesting interview I did in the fall campaign was with Drew Damp, the head of the Senate campaign committee. Drew basically said, look, my job is to elect Republicans. I don't care. There's a lot of folks that think Joe Nicola probably, if you had to guess, I'll just ask you, who kills more Republican legislation, Joe Nicola or Robbie Sauls?
It would probably be a member of the Freedom Caucus, but we don't know if that's going to be Nicola.
I actually don't think Nicola joins that. I think what you've seen inside that Freedom Caucus is you have a Rick Bratton, you have a Nick Schroer. My assumption is you'll have a Brad Hudson possibly joining that. Adam Schnelting, I assume. I mean, it's essentially the St. Charles Caucus. But you have Joe Carter, Mike Moon have their own offshoot. They have more of a Trump-style populist conservatism than more of a trial attorney conservatism of the St. Charles County caucus. Then you mix in Joe Nicola, who, and this is just my own, my United Fiber Yete of knowledge prediction. I think if Joe Nicola is successful, he is not in the Freedom Caucus. He's in the Joe Carter, Mike Moon caucus.
Yeah, and don't you think, based on what happened last session, a lot of reasonable legislators, even right-wing legislators, could look to Jill Carter's example of disassociating from the Freedom Caucus and say, that's the path?
Well, you saw Cindy O'Loughlin go down that path. Yeah. I think it's worked out for her pretty well. Jill Carter, I think is someone who she beat a member at a primary, and I think she'll probably have a primary. It's going to be interesting to see how she maneuvers. She left. She was on the floor once asking for a standing division, and all of her fellow caucus members ghosted her, except for Mike Moon. And I think you've seen he couldn't even join the Freedom Caucus because, I don't know, something he didn't do. He didn't fill some box out right.
It was a federal issue, from what I understand as well. The National Freedom Caucus said that he didn't fit their mold.
Yeah, that is quite bizarre to think of a Missouri State Senator getting kicked down that low. But I think it probably works out for Mike Boone and Jill Carter to be in their own caucus, along with potentially Joe Nicola. He's down in the early voting, but I think as we go along here tonight, we can maybe start calling a couple of these other state Senate races. Some of these are quite the margins. We don't have to see a lot of things to see some of these races are going to yield which way they're going to go. But now we're up to 113 of the precincts in out of 3,500 in the state of Missouri. Pardon me. But thus far, no real surprises. But now I think we have somebody with the Yes on Amendment 3 campaign. Kelton, who do we have with us?
Hold on.
Oh, welcome to Election Night in Missouri. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. It's great to be here.
So the early returns I saw in the early voting, you have a big 70-30 win in St. Louis, a 60-40 win in Eastern Jackson County. I assume the city of Kansas City will be even higher. I assume that's where you feel like you need to be in those two major places where you're going to get a lot of your yes votes. Are you feeling like that's where you need to be?
You know, it's hard to lean too much on the mail-ins and the early, but I think absolutely, I think we are confident that Missourians across the state support this measure the way they supported signature gathering and got us to this point in the first place. So I think we're feeling good.
The margin seems to be pretty large, at least in the early vote, for Amendment 3. What is next for the Amendment 3 campaign? Because as you've acknowledged on Scott's show before, there will be future battles after this election. What is next for the Amendment 3 campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what Amendment 3 does is enshrine a right to reproductive freedom and abortion access in our state constitution. And so it creates a new standard against which all existing laws will need to be measured. And so the next step will be litigation. And I think I have seen my partners at the ACLU of Missouri and Planned Parenthood beat back attacks at the state level on this campaign and win in court across the state numerous times over the past year, 18 months. And so I feel confident that in the next stages that we will be as successful and we will be able to restore access to abortion in our state as the voters are demanding. I'm
looking at 12 precincts out of 116 out of St. Charles County. Amendment 3, 5247. Are you surprised by that number?
I am not surprised by that number. We have been going hard and heavy in St. Charles. There are a lot of St. Charles residents who have been critical, active parts in this campaign, who have been coming out and knocking on their neighbors' doors, coming to events, helped with signature gatherings. So I am not surprised to hear that.
Mallory, it is interesting, and maybe it's part of the issue, and the reason I ask about St. Charles. You have the loudest delegation in the state, I think, for sure, from St. Charles. And frankly, most of the work that the St. Charles County delegation does in Jeff City is all centered around abortion. I find it a little odd that essentially folks send legislators from St. Charles to really just do abortion policy, but now you're seeing Amendment 3, 5247.
You know, I think that what people have woken up to or realized or noticed this year is that the politicians representing them in Jeff City don't represent their values. Those politicians are out of touch with what the people want, and we will show that tonight.
Okay, what do we need to be looking? I mean, obviously, Missouri's general election night doesn't have the drama that its primary election night does, outside of a few state senate races. Tell me, what can the folks watching this look for as the night progresses? What kind of statistics are you looking to see to know if you're going to be popping champagne tonight or if it's going to be a long night?
You know, I don't know. I think that my hope has long been that this will be called for us early, and it will be a large margin. I have always believed, and we have seen this year, that Missourians do not support political interference in access to abortion and all reproductive health care. And I think that's what we're going to see tonight. And my hope, my kids are here at the celebration with me tonight, so I'm hoping that we see it early and can celebrate and get home.
Well, I can tell you, Clay County released the first 80,000 votes, and you're 60-40 yes in Clay County, which a county that is probably thought of as a little. I'm sure you plan to win Clay County, but you probably didn't plan to win Clay County 60-40, right?
No large margin like that will surprise me, because it just reaffirms my belief in the people of Missouri and that they believe in each other and share these values that everyone deserves control over their own bodies and to make decisions about their families and their future. But I will say we also crushed it in signatures in Clay County and turned in a significant number there. So again, I'm not surprised.
Do the folks in your war room believe places you collected more signatures? Do they think that translates into a better chance to actually win votes in a general election?
You know, I haven't asked. I'm not sure that we think that that's a straight line, but I think what it shows me is that because the signature gathering effort was so volunteer driven, that it was people going to their own neighbors and own communities and farmers markets and church parking lots and Walmart parking lots. I think for me, there is if not a pure correlation, but there's definitely a connection to see how many people came out to get this on the ballot, to fight to get this on the ballot, who then turned around and voted yes and brought their neighbors with them.
Mallory Schwartz, the Yes on 3 campaign. Do you think it's possible, if this result's still in doubt, an hour or so from now, we could maybe text you and see if you can come back on and visit with us?
Yeah, shoot us a text. You know, we'll be here watching, same as y'all, and would love to keep chatting.
Mallory, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it. Good luck tonight.
Thank y'all. Great to talk to you.
All right, I think we can call a few more races here. It would appear as though we could have a new member of the Missouri State Senate in Representative Patty Lewis. We could say now will win this race to replace Greg Razor in the State Senate in a district that is, when you start thinking about marquee places in the state of Missouri, that district that has the plaza and all that in Kansas City, it has a history of producing some great legislators.
And as St. Louis guys, it often pains us to say it, but Kansas City is doing really well lately.
Boy, it is.
And when you think of the fact that they are generating a lot of strong, young Democratic talent, whether it's J.J. Rizzo over the last decade, or whether it's guys like Greg Razor, a lot of really good Democrat talent coming from Kansas City.
So as we move forward, you know that it is something that you can't admit that folks in Kansas City are doing well. But you know, a Kansas City person would never admit it if St. Louis is doing well.
It's a bit of an inferiority complex, I
think we can make another call here. In a pickup for the Democrats, we can now officially say that Stephen Weber, former House member, will be elected to the Missouri State Senate. He ran 8 years ago against Senate President Pro Tem Caleb Broughton. He ran again this year, and really, I think when they cut out the extra county, it used to be Randolph, now it's Cooper. Yep. When Boone County grew enough to be its own, Stephen Weber grabbed the chance. The Democrats had the field cleared, and he did very well.
You know, John Cena used to be the prototype in his early days of wrestling, And his gimmick was he was as perfect as you could make a candidate. Our version of it as Republicans might be Andrew Bailey because he's a war veteran, because he looks good on television. You could say the same thing about Stephen Weber, a guy that actually fought, a guy that's not afraid to speak his mind. And when you're building a terrific Democratic candidate, it ends up looking a lot like Stephen Weber.
We can also make a projection, speaking of Kansas City. State Senator Barb Washington will be reelected handily to represent Jackson County and the city of Kansas City in the Missouri State Senate. Looking forward, John, when you look at some of these numbers, I mean, if it stays 60-40 in eastern Jackson County, the city of Kansas City is going to do better. If you're Amendment 3, I think you're optimistic, but it is a little cautiously optimistic, right?
Yeah, I from the numbers that we've seen, though, Scott, it looks like the margin will be pretty significant. We'll see how those the other outstate counties come in.
As we kind of look through some of these races, some of them, we have one pickup, and I think we could say Maggie Nurnberg, that's 11. I think that's the floor of where Democrats wanted to be.
Yep.
A little greedy would be to pluck off one of the other two and get to 12. And then, if you're Doug Beck, you're pretty stoked. You're pretty stoked about maybe having 13.
Yeah.
Guys, they haven't had 13 since like 08 or something.
It's been a long time, yeah.
I think we can make another projection. Speaking of one of those, what I'm sure Senator Doug Beck hopes is 13, Senator Angela Mosley will be returned to represent North County, St. Louis, your old stomping grounds in the Missouri Senate.
A member of the Walton family, obviously, folks who were from North St. Louis County recognize the impact that the Walton family has had. It's a family business, and Angela Mosley's coming back to the Senate. Let's not forget, too, that she faced a tough primary against Chantel Nixon Clark.
Yeah, I'm not sure you've heard the last of her. She's a pretty talented person. I really grew to like her, having her on the show. She's a very, very articulate, very, very energetic person to be around. I don't think we've heard the last of her.
And she ran a spirited campaign against Miss Mosley.
Yep. I think as we flip through here, I think we could probably start to look at as the 15th is still too close to call, as is the 11th. The 11th is still too close to call. Amendment 3, I am a little surprised. My surprise is not that the Amendment 3 folks should be cautiously optimistic. My surprise is the retention votes are a little tighter than I would have thought.
And what are they? Do you have them in front of you?
When I looked at the Secretary of State's page right now, just so I can give you the most accurate things. Before we do that, why don't we can make another projection here. One of the absolute future stars of the Republican Party, Representative Curtis Gregory, has won his race for state Senate. He will go to the Missouri Senate, and if I had to guess that if you're the folks of the Republican Party, you're very glad he got through. Former Mizzou football standout. If I had to start picking people that could be governor of Missouri one day, the list doesn't get very long without getting to Curtis Gregory.
And when you talk about ideal candidates, how can you do better than a Missouri farmer, a legitimate farmer, and a Mizzou football star?
Curtis Gregory has the job every Republican fakes like they have when they run statewide. Speaking of farmers, good night for farmers. My senator, the senator from the Boot Heel, Jason Bean, will return to the Missouri State Senate. I think the tallest state senator, and obviously the man that has the best district in the state. The most good common sense folks are returning a good common sense state senator. As we look here through some of this retention, I'm a little surprised here. As it's right around 50%. I would have thought it would have been more, if you want the truth. I am a little shocked. When we look here, another batch of votes did just come in now. Now it's a little bit closer to 60-40 for the yes votes. But I'm still a little. It's a little concerning that the logic was tough. You had the pro-choice folks saying, don't retain these judges because they voted to take the abortion thing off the ballot. Then you had the pro-life folks saying, yeah, don't vote for them. I'm like, wait a minute, they voted for what you wanted.
And one of the issues, you bring up a great point, one of the issues that we haven't tackled yet is the division within the pro-life community. Now, we've seen it throughout the state. In the end, groups came out unified on No on 3. But Scott, folks here at this very table have talked for years about the fact that the only thing that a pro-life person dislikes more than a Democrat is another pro-life person.
Well,
and we see that battles up and down the ballot.
I do think if you're a pro-life person tonight and you're watching this and you just heard an interview with Mallory, you might be tempted to be discouraged. But I actually think you're seeing some commitment at the top of the Republican Party to maybe start a fresh look at what pro-life means, and not really what pro-life means, but how to approach it. I think if you have time today, go listen. I had Andrew Bailey sitting in your chair. He was your warm-up act, actually.
Yeah.
Bailey was. We talked to Cass Anderson.
Yes.
And she is a ball of fire, and I'm not sure she's not going to be the face of the pro-life movement going forward. And if they don't, I think they have serious problems. Because if you just go back to fighting and hating everyone, even, it was so funny, her just being on the show today with the Attorney General who's went to court and fought all their battles that they could. Mm-hmm. You had some of the other pro-life groups chirping at her.
Wow.
And it's like, you just sometimes you have to care enough about your issue to not be a jerk for 5 minutes. And I'm not sure some of the pro-life people can.
Well, and one of the things, if I'm at Missouri Right to Life, I'm thinking about the fact, when did we start doing scope creep? When did we go from just being about pro-life issues to worrying about a congressional map? Now, those folks know their strategy way better than I would, but we might be at a point where something like the Vitae Foundation, which Cass Anderson is with, could supplant a group like Missouri Right to Life in terms of political power in Missouri.
How many times have we heard Republicans at the top level grumble about Missouri Right to Life and how they don't like how they go about things? They never do anything.
Yep.
And I assume this, when this first started, I thought this would be the same way. I'm not so sure. I think that you might have a commitment now, and you could see a change in the Right to Life movement. But first, I want to thank a couple of folks. Preuss Foster Law for sponsoring tonight. United Fiber, very grateful to have them as sponsors. The Missouri Soybean Association, you can see our sweet Missouri soybean cut out right here. And Sun Solar, very grateful to have them allowing us to bring you election night in Missouri. And now we can bring you the final 2 state Senate calls before we get into our top few races here. We have Brad Hudson in southern Missouri will be elected to the Missouri Senate, as well as freshman Jamie Berger will represent southeast Missouri. He's not from Cape Girardeau, but he will represent Cape Girardeau in the Missouri Senate. Jamie Berger, I tell you, if I had to look at a pro tem out of that class, I think Jamie Berger has it seems like he's just cut out of a Ron Richard mold to be a state senator.
How would you compare the disposition, Scott, knowing both of these guys very well, of Brad Hudson and the approach he'll take in the Senate versus Jamie Berger?
I think the better opposite would be Schnelting. Might be, I think Hudson has a track record in the Missouri House of actually wanting to pass things. I think they'll both have, look, if you get into a social issue, you better pull up a chair. You're going to be there for a while with both of them. But I actually think you could see Hudson I think Hudson has more of an accomplishment mind. Now, and you never know, right? Mm-hmm. What people are going to be like. Adam Schulte could walk over there and start doing Eco Devo bills. Who knows? But it would be a long time since a St. Charles County person's done that. I think Hudson has a little bit more of a reputation of a legislative heft that'll serve him very well in the state Senate. I don't think you can compare him to Jamie Berger. That's probably not a fair comparison. But I think Brad Hudson may approach this a little bit more senatorially. And I think if you're looking for a sleeper senator, it's going to end up being a very good state senator. I think Brad Hudson would be my sleeper pick for someone. He'll probably do all the filibuster, he'll probably do all the shenanigans, right? But I do think there's going to be a side to him that wants to actually accomplish something. And I think he's obviously an intelligent guy. I actually think he's a sleeper to be a pretty good state senator.
Wow. We'll see. Yeah, once they start caucusing, we'll see.
That's what's great is as I'm having Cape Girardeau people chirp in now to me. I'm sorry. This is now 2 elections, and no one from Cape County has been fit to serve. It's not my fault, right? I'm just from Butler County, and we don't like Cape people. So as we've called all of these state senate races, plus I think we're probably getting close to being able to make a call in the 23rd. Right now, the state senate, if we had to look at what we probably think is going to happen, we are now probably sitting on 22-11, right? Is where we think this Senate is going to shake out. Actually, we're probably looking at 21-11. That's assuming Adam Schnelting wins. We'll have to check those stats again. I think he's at a good place with 2 out. So if you're Doug Beck, you're sitting on 11. Boy, you'd like 12, and maybe you start to get a little greedy right now.
And pushing for a Peerless, is that what you're
Robbie
saying?
Sauls is winning.
Robbie Sauls.
But Peerless is very tight in how things are shaking out. I tell you what, why don't we do this? Why don't we take a break? We'll come back, and we'll call some of these congressional races.
Sounds good.
When we come back here on election night in Missouri. Thank you to tonight's sponsors of election night in Missouri. Preuss Foster, United Fiber, the Missouri Soybean Association, and Sun Solar. And thank you for joining us on this very historic election night in Missouri.
Election night in Missouri will return after these messages.
St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
You know, Missouri farmers have been doing what's best for their land for generations. After all, no one knows what it takes to feed and fuel a growing global population better than they do. So why are trial lawyers threatening Missouri farmers' best defense against weeds? Our farmers don't need to be controlled. They need to be supported. Keep glyphosate in our state. Show your support at TakeControlMissouri.com. Paid for by Modern Ag Alliance in support of Missouri farmers.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work.
Some politicians claim cockfighting is a proud tradition, but is it really something to be proud of? Cockfighting isn't just cruel to animals, it's cruel to humans. It's linked to organized criminal activity, illegal gambling, even drug trafficking. Leading law enforcement and Christian groups have spoken out and are urging a stop to the violence. But some politicians want to give cockfighters a pass. Keep cockfighting out of our state.
Thank you to tonight's sponsors of Election Night in Missouri: Preuss Foster, United Fiber, the Missouri Soybean Association, and Sun Solar. And thank you for joining us on this very historic election night in Missouri.
Election night in Missouri will return after these messages.
St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
You know, Missouri farmers have been doing what's best for their land for generations. After all, no one knows what it takes to feed and fuel a growing global population better than they do. So why are trial lawyers threatening Missouri farmers' best defense against weeds? Our farmers don't need to be controlled. They need to be supported. Keep glyphosate in our state. Show your support at TakeControlMissouri.com. Paid for by Modern Ag Alliance in support of Missouri farmers.
Welcome back to Election Night in Missouri, joined by John Combest. Thank you for sticking around, sir.
What a wonderful night, Scott.
These are fun.
Yeah.
Like there's a fun part to it. It's almost like playing a prank on Kelton by not putting my mic back on.
And speaking of Kelton,
I'm going to tell you, I'm so grateful to everyone for joining us here on Election Night in Missouri. Thank you for watching. Thanks to Preuss Foster Law. Thank you to United Fiber. Thank you to the Missouri Soybean Association. Thank you to Sun Solar. But really, none of this happens without my man Kelton Turner, the executive producer here. He does it all. I have no idea how he does it. I would literally be a meth addict and strung out if I had to try to do the computer stuff that he does.
with your hair on fire, if you had to do what Kelton does. And it's amazing. And not only does Kelton do it for this show, but he does it for This Week in Missouri Politics, the midweek updates. And when you think of the number of guests that you have coming in remote with spotty hotspots or shaky Wi-Fi, or just trying to do it on their cell network, Kelton makes it happen. It's amazing how he does it.
And there is no there's no one that will tell you like Mediacom is the great internet. So he has to do it with essentially feeding a hamster spinning a gerbil wheel here. I also want to shout out to Jason Bagley. He's back helping us. He comes down on election nights when we need somebody with a level head. Jason is terrific. Appreciate him. Got to do a couple birthday shout-outs.
Is that right? All right.
Becky Willard's birthday is election day.
And she's 29.
20, of course. I was thinking
Yeah.
28, but whatever. Christine Engler, my buddy Kevin Engler's wife, and Wesley Bell. Speaking of Wesley Bell, let's talk about some of these congressional races. Joining Wesley Bell in the United States Congress, I think we could say is going to be Bob Onder. Bob Onder will be elected to replace Blaine Luetkemeyer. He ran for the seat when Blaine first won it, and now will be going to Washington, D.C. to represent the 3rd District, goes from St. Charles all the way out to St. Elizabeth. I tell you, there's a lot of folks west of Wentzville that were like, oh, great, here we go. And yes, Senator, now Congressman Onder, is going to say some things on TV, and if you need to emote about that, you can. He has done every single thing right since he won that primary. He has spent time in the western part of the district. He's come out and said he's going to actually do the job and bring home some of the tax dollars. He's been at Mizzou. I tell you, there is not a step Bob Onder's made since he won that primary that hasn't been something that could really get you excited.
You know, I think that, first of all, when you look at the primary that he came through, you had some brilliant minds on the other side of Bob Onder. So Bob Onder won a really tough primary, and I think Bob Onder is humble enough to know that the first steps that he had to make was going into the western part of the district, was visiting Mizzou, was reaching out to some of the folks that were frankly on the other side of him. And I think a lot of people incorrectly assume that Bob Onder would go and be a bomb thrower, but I think we'll see a Bob Onder that's a collaborator, maybe not a compromiser, but a collaborator in Congress.
Yeah, the one thing you can't say is Bob Onder's not a very intelligent guy. Not just, obviously being a doctor and a lawyer, you got to be smart. Bob Onder's a smart strategist. And I think Eric Schmidt has been able to fulfill many different roles in government, many different roles in the Missouri Senate. I think Bob Onder has some of those same tactics. I think let's call a few more of these congressional races. One of the greatest members of Congress Missouri's had will go down in the annals of Missouri as one of the best members ever sent to Congress. Sam Graves from North Missouri will be returning to Congress, chairman of the Transportation Committee. When you think about Missouri,
yes,
you think about Sam Graves.
And I look at Sam Graves as being one of the last vestiges of the Kit Bond administration. You know, when you look at maybe not agreeing with Kit Bond on everything, but when you think about somebody that's focused on bringing money back to Missouri, that's for fighting for the military, when I think of somebody in that Kit Bond mold, I think of Sam Graves.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Let's also talk about when we're talking about Jason Bede from the Boot Hill, we also have the Boot Hills Congressman. Jason Smith will be returning to Congress, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, a person on track who could very well be Speaker of the United States Congress one day. What a meteoric rise for Jason Smith.
I don't think people who just follow politics at an arm's length appreciate how powerful Jason Smith has become in his role in Ways and Means. And you see that with him bringing field hearings back to Missouri and really focusing on what this federal legislation means for our state, Scott.
So as we flip through here, the 2nd District, Congresswoman Wagner leading, but probably still a little bit too early. Probably too early to call some of these retention votes. The 11th, the 15th, the 23rd is trending. I think if you're Adam Schnelting, maybe you don't celebrate yet, but you're getting there.
You feel pretty good.
If you're Nicola Sauls, Gregory Peerless, you're still pretty nervous.
You're still praying for those who do.
I like that. All right, let's talk about some of these House races. As we begin to look, we've got about 11 House races here. The first is the 12th, Jamie Johnson trying to retain her seat. The 17th in the Kansas City area, the Northland, Bill Allen fighting off a challenge from Shirley Matta. Some of the early returns are probably encouraging for Bill Allen. My buddy Noel Torpy swears up and down that Bill Allen's going to win this race. I think that it would, if he does, it'll be a very good night for Republicans if Bill Allen returns.
And, you know, he's up against Shirley Matta, who's a UAW member, who's enjoyed a lot of strength from the union vote in that district.
J.C. Crosley running against Kemp Strickler, the incumbent Democrat. This is a rematch from 2 years ago. The cool part about this is Aaron Crosley, one of the hands-down most likable people I've ever met in my life. He kind of has that Wes Rogers about him. Republicans are like, No, do his amendment. He's a good guy. He is his personality exudes. His father, J.C. Crosley, is running to join with his son. Can you imagine if your dad was with you in the House?
Yeah, or can you imagine Thanksgiving dinner? And when you also think of the younger Crosley, he's actually a social worker. Scott, could you imagine going through social work school as being a white Christian male?
No, we need a lot of kinergy. It does feel like there's some folks optimistic on the Republican side in House District 12 that Mike Jones could possibly defeat Jamie Johnson. We'll see how the night goes. Jim Murphy, they always run against him. You're not going to beat Jim Murphy. How do you not like Jim? Brad Crist. There's a couple races here that I think abortion was big. You have Brad Crist, David Gregory, two stars of the party, two future stars, future leaders. You look at the situation, if Brad Crist and David Gregory lose, I think you're going to look at Amendment 3 and the abortion issue, and that's going to be two casualties the Republican Party lost to this issue.
Without a doubt. And you also need to think about the fact that Democrats had to recruit quality candidates in those districts. They did that. And let's face it, they also did it in District 100 too, which is that Phil Olerking district.
Let's just be honest here. Brad Crist, that district should not be a Republican.
Right.
With Brad Crist is gone, unless there's like some sort of factory of Brad Crist, you're not keeping that
We
seat.
stole that district.
Yeah. The fact is Brad Crist is the only person that could hold that district, and it's going to be tough. If he could make it happen, that it's going to be a great win for not just Brad, but that caucus.
Yeah, and when you look at that area too, that part of St. Louis County is one of those that Amendment 3 supporters have been targeting. It used to be that geography might have been a little bit darker red, but you have some of those suburban women that Republicans and Democrats are targeting.
You mentioned Philip Olerking. That is probably the Democrats, one of their top seats. That they were looking at. You look at Ben Keithley, very next door. It seems a little safer district, but still competitive. Then you got Colin Wallenkamp and Rod Odenthal at 105. I think that 105 was the tightest district in St. Charles County. Adam Schwadron run it with the closest margin 2 years ago.
And 2 years back to back, I believe Schwadron won by less than 100 votes, or it was a close election both times.
Then Melanie Stinnett, absolute. When you start talking, we've talked a lot about Crystal Quaid tonight. We're going to keep track of where she's at as far as where the Democrats did 4 years ago. Melanie Stinnett is the person I think everybody points to say, well, especially if Donald Trump's in the White House, got to have a woman.
Yep.
Or it's not going to be a completely competitive race. She's the one that I think the party wants. Got to win this race first, though.
And I think that Melody Stinnett does a good job back in her district talking about the fact that she's not interested in caucusing with one group of Republicans or another. She's happy to work with Democrats across the aisle for good legislation.
Then I think the last race, Elijah Haar has been working this race as hard as he worked any of his. In 136, Stephanie Hine, the incumbent, a very talented House member, very good campaigner against Jim Robinette, guy with a great resume. He's hit the ground hard. I was in Springfield and got to see some of his operation over the weekend. I mean, this has been an all-in total fight. They finally realized Betsy Fogle, they just stopped messing with her.
Yes.
And they've moved over to Stephanie Hine, who picked up a seat, probably intelligent. In Springfield, the Democrats, they have Hine. They're making a run at Stinnett. If they take out Stinnett and hold Hine, what a night for the Democrat caucus.
Yeah, and then let's not forget that if we look forward to 2026 in Senate District 30, if Stephanie Hine gets reelected, and there's a very good chance that'll happen tonight, the Democrats really are building a little bit of a fortress in that area, and Senate District 30 won't be as Republican as many people think it is.
I don't think it. I think Lincoln Huff won it, but
he's Lincoln Huff.
It could be we've talked about the Jeffco analogy, where in Jefferson County, Ryan McKenna's last election was very razor thin. It's not the candidate the Republicans were excited about. I think they were willing to elect Ryan McKenna, but that was about it.
Yeah.
And since then, they haven't elected any other Democrats. And I think you could be seeing the city of Springfield say, okay, Lincoln Huff, but that's it. No more Republicans. We want to vote. And I think it's the current Brad Crist is swimming against. It's just talent, that HRCC machine that is pushing that back. John Patterson, if I had to guess, he is the last Republican that will represent that district for a while in Lee Summit. They probably will do Patterson tonight. But that might be it.
Yeah, I think so. And so many of these, again, when you look at suburban women, you could take that argument down to Springfield or St. Louis County, and it's the same thing. Again, Amendment 3 may buoy those Democrats by just enough.
Another tranche of votes has been counted in St. Louis County. In 4 years ago, when Andrew Koenig defeated Deb Lavender, there were 113,000 votes cast in that primary. Right now, with 86,000 votes in, David Gregory has 41,200. Joe Peerless has 38,300. It's 51, 47 and a half. It is tight, but if you're David Gregory, I'd rather be on the upside of that. I mean, we're down into where 3,000 votes matters. You probably, if you're looking at maybe even a little higher turnout, let's say by all accounts, you would have 2/3 of the vote in, even in a bullish, turnout year. With 2/3 of the vote in, that's a good enough chunk. Probably not enough to call it, but it looks like Gregory's put up a good fight in St. Louis County.
And what I think is unique is, unless I'm mistaken, Scott, from the early numbers we've seen, no Senate district has had more early voting than the 15th district.
That makes total sense, because I will tell you, it's probably not your simple hillbilly fringe job to take up for the city people. Voting in St. Louis County is a nightmare.
It is.
And it's not that the election board can do much about it. They only have so many polling places. The only thing it is truly, we've talked about disenfranchisement. Maybe it's the same way in the city of St. Louis, I don't know. But I saw it for myself in West County. It is not reasonable to ask someone to wait in line 3 hours to vote. It's just not.
Yeah, and I went through, to use my personal experience as one example, I went through and I used the app provided by the county, and I only had an hour to wait. Now, I happen to have that time, but a lot of working folks, Scott, you brought it up before, don't have that time.
In Senate District 11, there were 50,000 votes cast 4 years ago, but in an uncontested race with J.J. Rizzo. This year, there's 40,000 votes in. It is 50.58 to 49.15. Nicola has edged out a lead, but it is razor thin. Now, in the Eastern Jack, I think there's a couple precincts that are Kansas City. And those precincts are obviously going to be huge solves. But in the Eastern Jackson part, it is straight up 50-50 right now. Again, too close to call by any standard.
So you might give Sauls the advantage then at that point.
I would say anything that's within a point or two, until you factor in the city of Kansas City, which is always a dumpster fire and takes forever to count.
The very worst in the state.
It's bizarre how it could take so long to do something. But yes, if that race is close, J.J. Rizzo's race was with Brent Lassiter when they spent no money 8 years ago. Rizzo was very close. It took those last two precincts in Kansas City to pull him across. What a difference the state government of Missouri would be, but for those folks pulling Rizzo across the line. We've got 34 precincts out of St. Charles County, an interesting county. They're loud. You always know they're here. Flipping down here, District 2, Ann Wagner doing very well against Ray Hartman in St. Charles County. Bob Bonder, of course, doing very well in his home county. 23rd, Schnelting with 8 precincts in of the 52, 57 to 42. But let's go down here and look at Amendment 3. To me, it's a very interesting thing to see what they're doing in on these amendments, because St. Charles County's legislative delegation is quite vocal about abortion. If you ask them about abortion, you better have somewhere to sit because they're going to talk. It is tightened up. 29% of the vote in. Amendment 3 is only 52-47 in St. Charles, but 40,000 votes.
And my prediction statewide was that Amendment 3 would pass 53-47. Now, here's the thing, Scott. If St. Charles County is only within 6 points of Amendment 3, to me that says that the statewide margin is going to be much larger.
I think as we have more data come in, I think we can get closer to calling a race for lieutenant governor as we approach 9/21 here on election night. I guess we could also, John, do you think you could maybe check on the national mood, see where
absolutely.
See where the race for the presidency is? I think, but right now the Missouri Times can project that David Wassinger will be Missouri's lieutenant governor from Hannibal, Missouri. Went to St. Louis, became a wealthy man in the legal profession, invested a lot of his own money, ended up his own money to run for lieutenant governor, won a very razor-thin race in the primary, going to have a much more comfortable lead in the general election, as David Wassinger will be the presiding officer of the Missouri State Senate.
You know, for folks who've just started following politics in the last year or two, David Wassinger might seem like a new entity, but he's actually not some neophyte. He's not some Hannibal hayseed that just blew off a turnip truck. You know, David Wassinger's wife, Colleen, was on the St. Louis County Council for more than a decade. David has been involved in Republican politics behind the scenes and as a donor for quite a while. And the most fascinating thing to me about David Wassinger is he has come out and said that in his role as lieutenant governor, one of his objectives is to make the Senate operate more effectively. Now, first of all, good luck with that. But secondly, I'm not sure exactly if that would put him at odds with some of his Freedom Caucus compatriots.
Makes sense. What are we seeing nationally?
Well, it looks like in the early election results, it looks like on one map, Pennsylvania is marked as pink, which means at least slightly Republican based on early turnout. Now, what we don't see here, based on the AP, what we don't see is exactly where those votes are coming from, if they're Republican or not. And right now, Donald Trump's electoral college count is 198 versus Kamala Harris's 112.
198, 112. You know, but if you've ever been a Missouri Republican, a young kid like I was sitting in Mark Richardson's office, watching election returns come in, it's all great to be excited, and then the city of St. Louis comes in.
Absolutely. It's a huge gap.
I don't know if that's how it works in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh, but in Missouri, how many happy nights were destroyed
Absolutely.
when the city of St. Louis came in and wiped out the Republicans?
And right now, on that same national map that we're looking at, it looks like Georgia is labeled pink, which would be leaning Republican right now, as is North Carolina. But again, Scott, does that include Atlanta? Does it include Pittsburgh and Philadelphia? We don't know yet.
Flip it through, even the Secretary of State's page only, they still only have the absentee or the early voting. I guess it's not absentee anymore.
I guess we have to call it
start changing our dialect here. Yeah. Let's talk about this retention as we flip through. The margins are spreading out somewhat on Judge Gooch and Judge Broniak. There's no logical argument. It's so funny. If you're on the left and you decide, okay, we're going to not retain these two judges, I promise you, whatever you don't like about them, you're going to hate about their
You're going to
replacement.
get their replacements will be much worse in their eyes. But I think this will be an interesting case study, Scott, when you look at, can these TikTok campaigns, which is what this was largely based on, be effective? Even if they don't get rid of Ginger Gooch and company, how effective was it?
Well, I mean, right now, if you look at the vote, it's 65-35 essentially for both. Probably still only, so 567 of 3,500 precincts are in the state. Probably still too close to call, but we could safely say it's kind of like Adam Schilting's seat. I think we could say he's going to be successful. He can breathe easy, but probably can't officially say that yet. With some of these seats, it's a little, with these two retention votes, I've not seen a retention race this close. If it's going, how funny would it be that if you break it down, you have Democrats wanting to scrap the Missouri plan? And Republican, I mean, it is a staple of how the Democrat Party maybe got in the spot it's in.
Yeah.
If you don't like the Missouri plan, you're not going to like the direct election.
Whatever. Yeah.
I mean, what comes next is not something I think you're going to have any time for. But as we look back, let's check the state of play here at 9:25 on election night. The Supreme Court retentions likely heading to retention. Judge Gooch and Judge Broniak. Can't quite say that for sure yet. Adam Schilting looks like he's heading towards a win in the 23rd. Can't quite call that just yet. SD 11, Nicola Sauls, razor thin. SD 15, Gregory and Peerless could not be tighter. You look at with those three out, it's still 20-11. I think as we can assume that we'll have a Senator Adam Schilting 21-11. With two out, if you're Doug Beck right now, you got to be nervous. You really didn't think he could win the 23rd. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
He had a couple recruits. He told me, but he was working, didn't land them. Nice person running, give it the.
But not the
try.
first pick of Doug Beck.
But probably not the maybe a person you thought ran for state rep first.
Yeah.
So you're probably looking at 21-11. But if you're Doug, you got to feel good about Sauls right now because you do have those Kansas City precincts outlying. And with Peerless, you got to be like, man, did we do what the Republicans did in Jeffco in 2010? Did we get so close just not quite this time.
And one of the other things I think that Doug Beck can take away from this is if you look at the Peerless campaign, again, it's hard to criticize any of their operations. They did a fantastic job in fundraising. And let's not forget, they were able to even get the Missouri Chamber of Commerce on their side. So think about if you're a Democrat and you're Doug Beck and you could replicate this in 2026 with other campaigns.
Why don't you pull out, you actually live in the 15th.
I did.
And you brought some of the mail. Later tonight, we're going to look at some of the mail stamped by the Missouri Chamber of Commerce. Who would have thought that?
Yeah, against the Republican candidate.
As we head into the 9:30 hour here, in Missouri politics, you see a lot of these votes come in. Essentially, they get counted now as we head into the 9:30 to 10. You're going to see a bunch of reportings. That number on the Secretary of State's page jumps up. The numbers do have the numbers that you see will jump up here, especially these next 30 minutes. I would suspect we're going to be able to. To call the retentions and the state senate races. Then we're going to dig into these state house races. While we're talking though, let's look at these amendments. On Amendment 2, the sports betting, significant money spent by Caesar's Palace to beat this back. They kind of had some sort of odd truce at the end, sort of, but I don't know that you can unspend $10 million. Missourians like to vote no, and right now they are voting no, 54-45. Looks like sports betting could be heading down.
Which probably means that we'll be debating in the next legislative session again, right, Scott? Or do you think there's a chance that legislators take a powder on it and say, look, the voters have already made their voice heard. There's no need to take up sports betting.
I think folks against sports betting will say that. They always do. That's the problem with having a vote. If you lose it, what do you do?
Yeah.
And I think there's casinos. There's two types of casinos. There's casinos that have invested into the sports books, and there's those that haven't. If you haven't, you probably, like Caesar's Palace, don't like sports gaming. It does look like it's going down. They needed a big thing out. And Amendment 7, though, let's take a peek in here at Amendment 7. It looks like it's heading toward passing.
Which isn't a surprise. So we've seen a lot of state legislators come out and talk about what they perceive to be the dangers of ranked choice voting, the fact that we shouldn't mess with our current election system today. So really no surprise that 7 is passing.
I think we're getting close to a call on 2, not quite yet, but there is a constitutional amendment that I think we can start to put together. This Amendment 7. It discussed ranked choice voting, non-citizen voting.
Yep.
It is the kind of thing that sounded good. Now the Missouri Times can project that Amendment 7 appears as though it will pass by a substantial margin, banning non-citizen voting, banning ranked choice voting. I don't know that it changes a lot now. There was always the threat of a boogeyman later that might be ranked choice voting, might let Mexicans vote. I was like, well, Steve Hobbs should be able to vote if anybody else can.
Yeah, anybody from Mexico should be able to vote.
I don't see how Drain County should be disenfranchised, but I'm in the minority there.
And let's not also forget...
This was a turnout thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, think of the number of editorial boards who were opposed to Constitutional Amendment 7 because they said it was xenophobic or that it was targeting illegal aliens. Not a surprise.
Yeah, let's check in here on Ann Wagner and Ray Hartman. Two outstanding folks. Two of the more entertaining people in all of Missouri politics. You don't get any more fun than Ann Wagner and Ray Hartman. Ray did all he could do to get her attention, and she just would not give it to him.
She absolutely refused to give him any acknowledgement or approval.
I saw a cold shoulder that made me feel like a prick in my heart for Ray Wagner, as I saw her totally give Ray Hartman absolutely no time of day to get any kind of motion in between. As we go through the ballot here, the Secretary of State's page reporting 645 of 3573. And we could say now our friend Mark Alford will be returned to Congress. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Mark Alford, what a stud.
Yeah.
The guy just gets it.
And tested by fire in that primary, again, against some really good candidates. And I think he exceeded a lot of folks' expectation in his freshman year.
I just think he's the guy that understands what's up, right? He when he took to this job, usually being in the media is not a great way to go to learn to be in politics. It's a great way to lose a general election by a great deal, like I'm afraid my friend Ray Hartman may find out tonight. Mark Alford took this like a duck to water. He is an excellent congressman. He is really popular in Washington with his colleagues who are actually willing to help him with his district. It is an underrated thing to be liked by your colleagues. Everybody says lobbyists are the boogeyman. My favorite people that dog lobbyists are the daily newspapers in this state.
Because they have their own lobbyists.
They employ
and
7 for their own special interest tax breaks while they dog lobbying. I've never seen anything as hypocritical as that. But Mark Alford really took to Washington well. His colleagues respect him. Talk about a guy that could be a star. I mean, when it's not always Mark Alford pushing to be on Fox News. I found a lot of times, one of his colleagues told me, it's House Communications pushing Mark Alford to go on TV.
Because he's so good at it.
He's good at it.
You know, one of the things that I was wrong about with Mark Alford, when I heard him in the primary, again, against some very good candidates, Mark Alford was talking about the fact that he might not be an expert on every issue on ag and defense, but that he was willing to listen to the people who were. And at the time, I thought that was a cop-out answer. And honestly, I thought it was a pretty weak answer to not go in with your own well-formed opinions. But as it turns out, Mark Alford has listened to experts. You see him getting a diversity of opinions when it comes to agriculture and other issues. So he has exceeded my expectations, Ken.
Yeah, he's just an enjoyable person to talk to. I mean, he's just the kind of guy, he's like a guy.
Yeah.
Like a guy's guy. And you don't really see that in the Republican Party as much anymore. There's a large effeminate streak that's actually the Missouri Republican Party. Mark Alford's a dude, man. He's just a good dude. As we said here at 9:33 on election night, in a changing Missouri, that's for sure, and especially a changing Missouri Republican Party. At the end of the night, I guess it's official now. This is Mike Kehoe's party.
Yeah.
We look to the future. Starring Andrew Bailey's reelected. I think, though, the future of the Missouri Republican Party could be being decided in Lee Summit tonight in a very close election. John Patterson, perhaps the greatest story of anybody I've ever seen rise high in state government. Exactly the type of person that you want to send into a swing area to try to bring people into the Republican Party. I think in many ways the future of the Republican Party, he is in a very close race, in his last House race in Lee Summit.
Yeah. I think what you'll see if John Patterson is successful in his reelection today, I think you'll see, instead of state legislators taking aim at the governor, like they might have done for the last session or two against Governor Parson, I think they might take their rage inward toward, say, a John Patterson. I think they might look at Governor Kehoe and say at this moment he's too strong, but John Patterson seems, frankly, so reasonable that
like
I think
looking across the Serengeti or the prison
and
yard
picking, yeah, exactly right.
I think if they do that, they're in for a surprise.
I think they are too. I think
John
Patterson is tougher than he lets on.
Yeah, you can tell that you could tell the easy marks because they put on the tough guy act.
Yeah,
I've watched a lot of these folks. The ones that are actually the ones you don't want to mess with, they don't go around telling you they're tough. They don't go around having to sell it. Everyone knows. Okay, don't mess with him. You could turn a work into a shoot real quick. And I've seen Patterson. I saw him as session went on in his second year. He stepped up on a lot of budgetary issues, which would be very interesting to see. The House budget, incoming House Budget Chair Dirk Deaton, would be very interesting how he approaches, especially if you have Senator Lincoln Huff still as the Appropriations Chairman. I saw some pretty decisive moves by John Patterson. The type of decisive moves you really don't want to mess with all that much.
And as you've said before too, who wants to argue with an Asian guy about the budget or math?
Yeah, your hands tied behind your back out of the start. Yeah. I mean, or your fingers are in those Chinese handcuffs, right, out of the very beginning. At 9:35 on election night here, I think what we may do, John, if it's all right with you, as we have, let's give an update. 700 precincts are now in, which is right about 20% of the vote. Let's flip down through here. We believe all the Republicans will carry statewide. What's interesting to me is of the first 20% of the vote, Josh Hawley is right there along with the rest of the ticket. Trump's at 65, Kehoe's at 65, but right there, 62, 63 is Hawley, is Wassinger, Hoskins, Malik. Bailey is at 66. So right now, leading the ticket in this state is Andrew Bailey.
Wow.
The guy just gets votes.
He does. But you know, the really surprising thing about this is when you talk to a lot of Republican insiders, they might have one criticism or another about Josh Hawley. And I think most of us conservatives can make one qualm or another about Hawley, but it appears with 61% of the vote right now, it appears that Hawley is pretty popular among Missourians.
There is, why don't we do this, John? Why don't we take a break? We come back, I think we're going to be able to call some of these state Senate races. I think it's looking better for David Gregory as results come in. Why don't we do this? Let's take a break. We'll be right back here on election night in Missouri.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work.
Some politicians claim cockfighting is a proud tradition, but is it really something to be proud of? Cockfighting isn't just cruel to animals, it's cruel to humans. It's linked to organized criminal activity, illegal gambling, even drug trafficking. Leading law enforcement and Christian groups have spoken out and are urging a stop to the violence. But some politicians want to give cockfighters a pass. Keep cockfighting out of our state.
Thank you to tonight's sponsors of Election Night in Missouri. Preuss Foster, United Fiber, the Missouri Soybean Association, and Sun Solar. And thank you for joining us on this very historic Election Night in Missouri.
Election Night in Missouri will return after these messages.
St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
You know, Missouri farmers have been doing what's best for their land for generations. After all, no one knows what it takes to feed and fuel a growing global population better than they do. So why are trial lawyers threatening Missouri farmers' best defense against weeds? Our farmers don't need to be controlled. They need to be supported. Keep glyphosate in our state. Show your support at TakeControlMissouri.com. Paid for by Modern Ag Alliance in support of Missouri farmers.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work.
Some politicians claim cockfighting is a proud tradition, but is it really something to be proud of? Cockfighting isn't just cruel to animals, it's cruel to humans. It's linked to organized criminal activity, illegal gambling, even drug trafficking. Leading law enforcement and Christian groups have spoken out and are urging a stop to the violence. But some politicians want to give cockfighters a pass. Keep cockfighting out of our state.
Thank you to tonight's sponsors of Election Night in Missouri. Preuss Foster, United Fiber, the Missouri Soybean Association, and Sun Solar. And thank you for joining us on this very historic Election Night in Missouri.
Election Night in Missouri will return after these messages.
St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint.
Welcome back to Election Night in Missouri. John Combest with us all night. John, not a lot of surprises. We have our first real surprise of the night come in.
And what's that?
Representative Chris Lonsdale.
Yes.
Not even in the Senate District 17 portion of Clay County, up in Liberty.
Yep.
Lost re-election tonight, it appears, or at least heading toward a likely coming up short. Also, but we can't officially project on the Republican side. Representative Adam Schnelting, the Missouri Times can now say, projects to win Senate District 23. Schnelting will make 21 Republicans now to 11. So the Democrats are up one. 23 was a long shot. It's Bill Eigel State Senate District. It is trending Democratic. Lots of North County folks.
Absolutely.
You made a trip growing up in North County across the river to St. Charles for a minute, didn't you?
I did. There were a whole lot of North County neighbors that have made that trek across the river, kind of a fleet of safety into St. Charles County.
But Gina Walsh, Tim Green, Mike Lewis,
a whole lot
John
of folks.
Combest, and you've made a full circle around.
Yeah, I've come back. I've come to Chesterfield. So the 15th district. But your original point there, Scott, you have Democrats that have hardcore Democrats that have moved from North St. Louis County out to Adam Schnelting's district. And again, Schnelting beat two terrific candidates, both Phil Cristofanelli and Rich Krismer in that Republican primary. And, who knows what 4 years is going to show, but this was not the Democrats' top pick.
No, this wasn't 21 to 11 state Senate. With two races. The 15th, David Gregory, Joe Peerless, still too close to go. With Gregory with a lead. If I had to guess, this race is trending toward Gregory, but it's going to be very close. Nicola's opened up a little bit of a lead, but that race is probably still the tightest one on the ballot. We are now going to be joined by who is becoming the face of the pro-life movement in the state of Missouri, Cass Anderson from Springfield. Cass, thank you for joining us here on Election Night in Missouri.
Me. I'm here at the Governor Kehoe watch party, and energy is high. Things are looking.
Well, you're just down the street.
I am. Yep, I'm up here in Jeff. So it's a good night.
So right now, there's a little over 20% of the vote in. Amendment 3, yes, has 52-47. Some of the larger counties, though, I think haven't actually filled into this. Right now, are you optimistic? Are you hopeful? How are you feeling here at 9:43 on election night?
So I was feeling really good because when we had just 177 precincts reporting that were all saying that they were for Crystal Quaid, basically, we were in the lead, a slim lead, but in the lead, and that told me that there's real hope for this. But we're back down about 5%, and so keeping a close eye on it. I'm hopeful. I believe that Missourians are good, and I believe that Missourians are well-educated people. And really what we know from informed ballot polling is that when people know the true effects of this amendment, they swing drastically away from it. And so I'm trusting that Missourians did their research and their homework.
Cass, when you look beyond tonight and you look beyond this election, there will always be more pro-life battles to fight. Can you talk a little bit about how you and the Vitae Foundation plan on bringing pro-life people together and mending some of those unnecessary divisions that we've had in the last few years?
Yeah, I think that we've learned something, right, this year. We've learned that we are extremely divided as a pro-life movement because we were not prepared for this, were we? We had organizations all over the place wanting to do their own thing, and we're looking out for their own self-interest instead of trying to come together and create a really united plan. We should have had a plan together years ago. We knew that something like this would come. We should have had a plan together within 90 days of Roe being overturned. This is something that the people that are experienced in this should have been able to predict. But you know what we're going to do moving forward? We're going to focus on making an environment in our culture in which women who are in crisis are uplifted, they're supported, they're told you're valuable and you're loved and you can do this. A real message of female empowerment is telling a single mother that she can achieve anything she wants to achieve because this is the United States of America where anybody can do anything. Our governor, who was elected tonight, had a single mom, and now he's the governor of the state of Missouri. Let's uplift women, let's tell them they're supported, and actually put actions behind those words. And Vitae Foundation, their entire message is the pro-woman approach. And so I'm blessed to be a part of them, and I'm excited to move forward with creating a plan for the future, no matter if we win or lose tonight.
So I guess my question to you is, there's been in the last few weeks, you've ignited a lot of folks that were pro-life, but maybe just a little tired of the drama, if you want the truth, and just the nastiness and the negativity. Is that a fight that, will you be on This Week in Missouri Politics 6 months from now with that same positive message? There's a lot of people in this state who would actually like to see pro-life people smiling and happy about being pro-life instead of just constantly looking ticked off about being pro-life.
Yeah, so I think that the key here is until we solve the main issue, until we as Missourians are 100% on board with knowing that life is valuable, all life is valuable, let's stop fighting the tertiary issues. Let's stop talking about stem cells. Let's stop talking about some of the like minute pieces of legislation that aren't focused on the main thing. And let's stop doxing, certain legislators if they're not, 100% in line. Okay, we have to focus on, are you pro-life and are you willing to get behind saving as many babies as possible? Let's move the football down the field before we focus on just, looking at each blade of grass on the football field and making sure it's 1.5 inches, right? Like, we gotta focus on the main thing, because not focusing on the main thing got us where we are tonight. This is Missouri. I cannot believe that this race is this close. It shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't be happening.
Cass, when we think back to the primary, there were a lot of good pro-life folks who had some questions about Mike Kehoe's dedication to the pro-life community. You're there at Mike Kehoe's party. What can you say to conservative activists and pro-life people who had been skeptical of Mike Kehoe? What do you say to them?
I'm going to say I was one of you. I was skeptical of Lieutenant Governor, now Governor Mike Kehoe. And now, you know what I've learned in the last 6 weeks? I have learned that this is a guy who was willing to lose the governor's race if it meant defeating Amendment 3. This is the guy who picked up every phone call, who dedicated members of his team to being available 24/7 to defeating this amendment. This is a guy who went out and raised money for us and uplifted us and made sure that the Vote No on 3-PAC was funded as well funded as we could possibly be. I was wrong about Lieutenant Governor Kehoe. I was wrong about him, and I have seen a good man who cares deeply about life. And, I've been blown away. He's gone above and beyond for things he will never, ever get credit for, because nobody's going to know except for me telling you right now what he has done behind the scenes. I have been shocked. I've had an attitude change because, man, was I wrong? This guy really, man, I hope you hear my heart in that.
I do, because I've seen it myself. I get the viewers, the readers of the Missouri Times give me this wonderful opportunity to sit in the state Senate. I watched, it was how many things that happened behind the scenes that Mike Kehoe would actively ask not to have any credit or have anybody know. He actually gets results. And he doesn't, it is funny, he doesn't get on Facebook and whine enough. He probably could not be mayor of Faughn, if you want the truth. But he actually goes and accomplishes. I have some Democrat friends that are very excited to see Mike Kehoe elected. I'm like, yeah, no, I am too, but I don't think your reasoning's that great. He actually, all the Twitter and Facebook nonsense keeps the wins from coming. Mike Kehoe's style is actually to go accomplish things. I think it's about to be a golden era of the Missouri Republican Party. It's going to be led by Mike Kehoe for the reasons you just outlined.
Yeah, I'm telling you, he's a behind-the-scenes guy, and I've learned something about politicians. I'm only 25 years old. I haven't been doing politics that long. I have a lot to learn. I've been learning every day. People have been pouring into me, and I've just been.
Combest is super old. You know more than he does, so.
No, and one of the things I've learned is sometimes, not always, but sometimes the politicians who are doing the most are the ones who are talking the least about it. I didn't realize that. And it's been something that I've been really impressed and excited to learn. And I know that there's going to be things that are going to shock me, and I'm going to, constantly be surprised in politics. I always am. I'm always surprised to learn something new about, quote unquote, the swamp or the corruption in politics. But through this campaign, this opportunity to work this, I've learned about who the real movers and shakers are. I've learned about who really cares and who's willing to get down to business and make calls and raise money and make sure that people are on board and in line. And they're not always going to get the credit. They're not always going to get the flashy headlines. They're not always going to get the conservative kudos. And I'm learning to be completely okay with that.
Cass Anderson, the future face of the pro-life movement in the state of Missouri. Thank you so much for making the time. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Told you. I'm telling you, if that's the face, that uplifting message, that positive message, if that's the pro-life message, then the pro-life movement's in good hands. Win or lose tonight.
Right.
If you go back to just the hating all the time and just the constant whining and nagging, I don't think that's a sustainable movement. that, led by Mike Kehoe, Cass Anderson. I mean, look, Mike Kehoe can work behind the scenes. You have to have women talking about this issue.
Absolutely.
Or it's just not, it's not going to resonate. But that right there is kind of what I was telling you about. I think that's the future, to actually have pro-life wins.
Yeah. And I think also the message of reconciliation toward Republicans. I mean, you heard it directly from Cass. So many folks in the pro-life community thought, well, he's not at the same spot that a Bill Eigel or a Jay Ashcroft is, so we need to write him off. I think Cass showed that thinking is a mistake.
Speaking of somebody that was written off, Bill Allen, Representative Bill Allen in his first term. Lots of folks thought there's no way Bill Allen could win. My buddy Noel Torpy, he called this from the jump. I mean, he was all about this. But while Chris Lonsdale lost for the Republicans, Bill Allen was a hold that I don't think that many people thought they were going to get.
Yeah, and again, Shirley Matta, a member of the UAW, a proud, strong union member, and unions were all in for it. I think Bill Allen was helped a bit by some of the school choice folks, I believe, came in and helped him a bit. But standing on his own 2 feet for the most part, it appears, Scott.
It came in well. I think we can also start to pull together this 2nd Congressional District. We've held it off for a while just to make sure St. Louis County had a healthy margin out. But I think now, as we're getting about 10% of the precincts in, we can start to see that Congresswoman Ann Wagner will be returned to office, not by a landslide. That district, they've tried to make it more Republican. It is just a fight to keep St. Louis County having a Republican. It seems like it is just changing, not just North County, not just some parts of South County, but even West County, that Chesterfield area. I just don't know how long they will continue to vote Republicans, but they seem to be able to vote for Ann Wagner.
Now, Democrats would say that happens to be the Trump effect, that Donald Trump has pushed suburban women away. I think one of the real tests for Ann Wagner, I think, was every year she looks at her margins, and opponents look at the margin and say, will this invite some sort of a primary? I actually thought that Bob Onder was going to be the one challenging Ann Wagner. So if you were a Republican thinking of challenging Ann Wagner, you're looking real closely at that margin, and it probably doesn't look that good for you.
One of the biggest nervous parts for the Republican Party was John Patterson, the incoming House Speaker, the current Speaker designee, the current floor leader. He had all he could handle in his last race, and it's one of those races where, just like we're talking about in Chesterfield, they just don't want to be Republicans anymore.
Yeah.
But they've decided, the Missouri Times could project, that Dr. John Patterson, the incoming Speaker of the House, will win re-election in a very tough race in a district that I don't think any other Republican could have held. John Patterson comes through with a big win. There were a lot of nervous folks and a lot of excited Democrats thinking they could take him out, but he put his head down, he did his doors while managing a caucus, while breaking fundraising records. He had to manage his own affairs back home, and it looks like he did so successfully.
And he's against a very good candidate, Kevin Grover, who was a teacher who had a great deal of support within that district. So big win for JP.
Tells me he will be a state rep. It just won't be till after Speaker Patterson is done.
That's right.
I really think, here at 9:55 on election night, 5 minutes to 10, I had this big talk like we'd be done at 10. I don't think we're going to quite be done at 10. But I will say this. I think it was tonight, the Republican Party is Mike Kehoe's party.
Yep.
Whether you're in the pro-life movement, whether you're the business community, the fundraising, this is Mike Kehoe's Republican Party. But I think the future of this party is John Patterson.
Yeah, and I think let's think real closely too about let's go back to some of these House races. And it appears as though one of our guests, which was Hannah Sutton, talked earlier a little bit about the margins and what we expected there. It looks like Republicans are going to end up with JP's victory, with Bill Allen's victory. And if Republicans are able to hold, say, an Olerkin and a Brad Christ, this will be a surprisingly good night for Republicans.
Well, I think right now you have the Republicans down one with Chris Lonsdale. Young man. I doubt you've heard the last of Chris Lonsdale. Very young person in office. Democrats picked that seat up. I think, if you're the Democrats and you were looking to be +5, well, you're +1 right now. Mm-hmm. You have one that you're defending that's not. You have two actually, Kim Stricker and Stephanie Hine. Those are potential pickups for the Republicans that aren't off the table yet. Then you look at a Jamie Johnson, you've got to defend that. That race is quite close, and not ready to call exactly yet, but getting close. Then you just kind of look down through. If you hold a Brad Crist, I think Jim Murphy will be fine. We're not ready to call that yet, though. But
Ben Keithley,
Ben Keithley seems right. If you're the Democrats, this list now, as we've started to call off of Bill Allen, I think the Democrats thought was in the bag.
Yeah.
I think they thought they had that. To get to 5, you're going to have to hold your 3 and run the table almost to get to that 5-seat pickup.
You know, a few weeks ago, Jonathan Ratliff sat right here on This Week in Missouri Politics and talked about the fact that he was surprised the Democrats, the House Democrats, didn't do a better job raising money this year. And Ratliff said, that's on House leadership, if you're a Democrat, to have a unique opportunity with the Amendment 3 wind at your back. How did they not raise more money in this campaign?
I think that part of it is there's an institutional belief that that every special interest wants to give to the majority party. In the House especially, what can the Democrats really do for you? So it's almost like giving on faith. It's a trailing indicator of these state Senate races. Mm-hmm. It's just very hard to cough up the money. St. Louis County's had some more votes come in. Jim Murphy is doing very well in District 94. I think we could just about project his win. I don't really think this one was that close, but the Democrats always make a run. They run some mail, but Jim Murphy is an outstanding guy. You can't be around Jim Murphy and not smile. Yeah. And it would appear to me that we could probably get pretty close as we flip through some of these election returns. In the 15th, it's David Gregory's opening up a bit of a lead for the first time tonight with 92,000 votes. And now keep in mind, 4 years ago, 113,000 votes. With 92,000 votes in, it's 47,600 to 43,300. He's starting to open up a bit of a lead there.
Wow. And let's go back real quick to the District 100 race. Again, that's that Colin Lovett versus Phil Olerking race. With absentees in, Colin Lovett is up on Republican incumbent Phil Olerking, 50.3 to 49.6. That's a razor-thin margin there, Scott. That's about 126 votes. That's just with, I said absentee. I'm used to saying absentee. Just with the early voting in, a Democrat can make a pickup in District 100.
We have another one. We have a House District 12. Looks like it is very close, and I think we're getting ready to pick up, make a projection in SD 11. Let's bring up our man. Jim Murphy looks like he's going to cruise, but right now we can make a projection. There's a pickup on the Republican side. I think we could say in House District 12, Mike Jones, we're ready to have a call here, but we're going to say first, Jim Murphy, South County, St. Louis, the most quotable man in the Missouri Republican Party, the friendly Irishman, will be reelected to the Missouri House of Representatives.
They just can't take him out, and they had a pretty good candidate this year, a guy named Kyle Kearns.
Yeah. In another good night for the Republicans, it would appear as though there's been a pickup. Someone the Democrats were very excited about, Jamie Johnson,
yes.
tapped for leadership positions. It does appear, though, the results are in, and it looks like the Republicans have picked one up in Mike Jones is going to be the new representative from the 12th. Now, how about this for an interesting thing? You always assume that emanating out from the cities is where Democrats pick up. Mm-hmm. You're going to pick up the seat closest to the city before you pick the...
Yep, like a concentric circle.
The Democrats lost Jamie Johnson, an incumbent, skipped over that to Liberty and picked up a seat in Liberty with Chris Lonsdale. It's kind of it went from normally a very controlled circle the Democrats are trying to grow to a little bit of splotches.
To a big hop over. And let's not forget, too, that Mike Jones had the benefit of getting a little bit of help from Americans for Prosperity was involved in that race. And then also, I believe, Axiom Strategies worked for Mike Jones as well. So Jamie Johnson was up against some big guns in that election.
What a night for the House Republicans if this is the state of play and they lose Chris Lonsdale, but they pick up Mike Jones and Jamie Johnson. Most folks thought, well, the incumbent seats with the Amendment 3 on the ballot, Mike Jones or whatever good candidate he is, he's not going to be good enough to knock off an incumbent with Amendment 3 on. He did. Lonsdale, part of I think a young man, a very young man in politics, a little tough. So I think, with David Gregory, we've got about 10,000 votes left to count. He's up about 5,000. So I think we're nearing projections in these two races. I mean, if we end up looking, and the Republicans are even in the House as we sit right now, if they pick up these two seats into 23-11 state Senate, that's a hell of a night for the Republican Party.
Yeah, defending that ground. And I also think, too, I mean, I guess the question is, does David Gregory approach the Senate now after coming in a really, really tough primary, getting beaten up in a primary, getting beaten up in a general election? Does he come in with maybe a little bit of chip on his shoulder and want to prove a few points to Democrats?
I think that David Gregory has a chip on his shoulder. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think they made a heck of a run at him. I also think the fact of the matter is people in Chesterfield just are not Republican anymore. Mm-hmm. And the trend line is clear. I think David Gregory looks like he may pull this off tonight, but if I had to guess, he will be the last Republican senator from Chesterfield. If he serves as you assume he gets reelected. Right. But after 8 years, something's going to have to change that trend line. It's like in rural Missouri, the trend line never seems to turn. You just continue to see Republicans inch up a little more and more. There's no negative trend line in rural Missouri for Republicans, and it shows. There's been no upswing in the trend line for Republicans in Chesterfield. It's just constantly been edging down.
That's true. Now, I think if you're a Democrat or you're a part of the Peerless campaign, you would say not so fast about a Gregory re-election in 4 years, especially with how well Peerless did in this campaign. Can they find somebody? And, you know, part of the attraction of Joe Peerless is that, again, he's not a traditional cookie-cutter woke Democrat. He's a guy that has real-life business experience. He was a business executive. He doesn't come across as a member of the woke community.
Now for two of the more interesting elections on the ballot. The Supreme Court brought in a little bit of politics, as they have no choice but to with the abortion debate. But now the Missouri Times could project that Judge Ginger Gooch will be returned to the Supreme Court with a healthy margin, but a margin that might spark a debate about the Missouri plan and about kind of the future of the court. As well, I think we can project that one of the absolute stars of the Missouri judiciary, one of the fastest rising people you're going to find, and one of the most personable judges, you'll see this side of Judge Russell, Kelly Broniak, will also be retained to the Missouri Supreme Court. John, what do you take from it? These are normally not discussed.
Yeah.
The left, who normally is the defenders of some of the Missouri plan, the left came out after these two judges.
Well, it seems like, first of all, we're long overdue for yet another argument about the Missouri plan. Scott, this argument was going on when you and I were both young men, and it's funny to think that we're still having that conversation today. Again, I go back to the idea of the folks who put together the anti-Gooch and anti-Broniak campaigns did a good job of rallying people on Twitter, and that's pretty novel. It didn't pay off at the ballot box this year. I wonder if there's anything that other members of the Missouri Supreme Court or other conservative judges can learn from this experience.
So I think we could start to one of the most high expensive races on the ballot, one of the biggest targets for Democrats. However, I think they've come up short. In Senate District 15, I think the Missouri Times can now project that David Gregory will be elected to win the seat in the Missouri State Senate, an absolute star in the party, former representative, former statewide candidate. David Gregory running for that seat in Chesterfield, bruising three-way primary, came out against the top recruit the Democrat Party had in Joe Peerless. However, it does look like, even though being outspent and in some ways outgunned on the ground, David Gregory will be elected to represent Chesterfield in the Missouri State Senate. Huge win.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the Democrat playbook of what they did with Joe Peerless, I do think it is a model going forward. You have to have a really good recruit and a whole lot of money. But the other most important takeaway from this is it underscores the reframing of the political parties here. Who would have ever thought 20 years ago that the Missouri Chamber of Commerce in a tight race would have come out and done mailings against a conservative Republican? Who would think that trial attorneys would flood the campaign coffers of a conservative Republican? So we have seen a realignment, just like we've seen in the last few legislative sessions, when it comes to groups like MATA and the trial lawyers and also the Missouri Chamber. The Missouri Chamber really flexed their muscle in this in this election as well.
But now they have a very surly senator
They sure
from the
do.
15th to go talk to. It's going to be very interesting to me to see how David Gregory, what that first meeting with the Missouri Chamber is like. And I think we're seeing, and again, as the night progresses, it does appear as though all the prognostications about the doom and gloom for Republicans was greatly exaggerated. You've now seen thus far with what are we looking at? 1, 2, 3, 4, half a dozen competitive races, just as many competitive Democrat races as Republican races.
Yes.
House is even.
Yep.
Democrats had a pickup, but that pickup was kind of baked in the cake, right? With Boone County coming in,
Yep.
not a competitive one. Maggie Nernburn held Clay County against a very tough competitor in Jerry Nolte. Then to take it to 22 to 12, you had Schnelting and David Gregory win. Now, the last state Senate race, the Missouri Times can now project that Joe Nicola will win the state Senate race in Independence, northeastern Jackson County. Joe Nicola, a reverend who ran for state Senate 2 years ago in Lee Summit, then ran in a very tough primary against Representative Aaron McMullen. Some viewed as the underdog, was outspent, but on the ground and with President Trump on the ballot, he comes through, and it appears as though he will represent eastern Jackson County in the Missouri Senate, giving the Republicans a 23-11 advantage.
Not only did he beat Robbie Sauls, but let's not forget, he also defeated the Kansas City Star, which had a real problem with Joe Nicola going into the election. And I think that, I think a lot of folks underestimated Nicola in the primary. I certainly did. I thought that McMullen was going to win that race walking away. And we'll see what kind of a senator Joe Nicola is.
So 23-11. I guess that does show they did essentially trade, right?
Yep.
They traded independence for Columbia.
Yep.
If you're looking at the Senate going forward, I think you see Joe Nicola. If I had to guess, I think he's with Jill Carter and Mike Moon. I would say Adam Schnelting is in the caucus that is out to get Senate leadership. I would say Hudson probably with the St. Charles caucus against Cindy O'Loughlin
For now.
But I don't think something tells me Hudson is going to be the one that actually wants to move, a little bit of Andrew Koenig type.
I see.
Wants to actually go accomplish things, wants to probably somewhat receptive to what Cass Bowen's, her way to message pro-life stuff, the pro-life issue. I think the doom and gloom around Brad Hudson may be a little overstated. You have Curtis Gregory, future star, could be governor. Jamie Berger, potentially a future pro tem. David Gregory, easily, I think you could say, likely statewide candidate someday after winning this very tough race. Good night for the Republicans. If you had asked Drew Damp 23-11, you took it all day.
Absolutely. And you think if you're the Democrats, if you're Doug Beck and you go back to the drawing board tomorrow, you do a little bit of Wednesday morning quarterbacking, what could you have done better in this election? It appeared in these seats they had as much money as they needed, at least in the districts in which they had recruited.
Let's bring up our graphic of what the Missouri Senate looks like today. 23, you need 18 votes to do anything in the Missouri Senate, but you need 23 votes to override a governor. I don't think anybody wants to the Senate. The House will override some budget items because they want attention. The Senate normally, I don't think anybody's overriding Mike Kehoe, but I do think 23-11. If you get that down to 22, then all of a sudden 4 guys go to dinner, they can stop things in the Republican Party. Now that 5-vote majority probably lowers the power of the individual Republican senators to have that big a caucus.
And let's not forget, we'll also have a lot more pressure from a new guy coming in, from Governor Kehoe, and I think it's just a different dynamic.
It's interesting. I'm not sure David Gregory owes allegiance to the folks that you would think. I'm pretty sure Joe Nicola does not feel he owes allegiance to anybody because he won with very limited funding. Not with definitely help from Cindy O'Loughlin. She came in and bought the TV ads. Gregory will owe Cindy O'Loughlin. I'm not sure who he'll owe after that. And I know some folks he probably owes a bit of a grudge with. Yeah. But in what is becoming a trend, another in the good night for Republicans, Colin Wellenkamp will win a very tough seat in St. Charles County. The most competitive seat 2 years ago, look, a seat I really think the Democrats thought, okay, we're not going to lose Jamie Johnson. I'm not sure they thought they'd win Lonsdale, but they might. I think they thought they would take out Bill Allen. I think they thought they would take Schwadron's district, and they'd be off to the races.
I mean, it speaks well to Colin Camp. You know, you look at Adam Schwadron, and he knocked doors like crazy there. So you figure 4 years, 2 terms, and that was definitely a top target for Odenthal.
As we look forward, let's look at the races that we don't have called here. We've called the state senate. It's going to be a 23-11 Missouri State Senate. The Judge Gooch, Judge Broniak were retained. All the members of Congress reelected. In the House, we do have some races outstanding. We do have Kim Stricker, J.C. Crossley, Brad Criss, Lisa Darrington in St. Louis, Colin Lovett, Phil Olerking still out, Ben Keithley, Jacqueline Cotton still out, Melanie Siddett, Derek Nolan, Stephanie Hine, Jim Robinette. If you're looking at the early returns, though, you have to feel good if you're Melanie Siddett to hang in. You have to feel good if you're Ben Keithley, and kind of see where things progress. But the things we've talked about most will be these amendments, Amendment 3 and Amendment 2 still out. Why don't we take a break, John Combest, here at 10:12 on election night. We'll be back to wrap up the last 6 House races, and we'll give you some projections on Amendment 2 and Amendment 3 after this. Thank you to tonight's sponsors of election night in Missouri: Preuss Foster, United Fiber, the Missouri Soybean Association, and Sun Solar. And thank you for joining us on this very historic election night in Missouri.
Election night in Missouri will return after these messages.
St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
You know, Missouri farmers have been doing what's best for their land for generations. After all, no one knows what it takes to feed and fuel a growing global population better than they do. So why are trial lawyers threatening Missouri farmers' best defense against weeds? Our farmers don't need to be controlled. They need to be supported. Keep glyphosate in our state. Show your support at TakeControlMissouri.com. Paid for by Modern Ag Alliance in support of Missouri farmers.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work.
Some politicians claim cockfighting is a proud tradition, but is it really something to be proud of? Cockfighting isn't just cruel to animals, it's cruel to humans. It's linked to organized criminal activity, illegal gambling, even drug trafficking. Leading law enforcement and Christian groups have spoken out and are urging a stop to the violence. But some politicians want to give cockfighters a pass. Keep cockfighting out of our state.
Thank you to tonight's sponsors of election night in Missouri: Preuss Foster, United Fiber, the Missouri Soybean Association, and Sun Solar. And thank you for joining us on this very historic election night in Missouri.
Election night in Missouri will return after these messages.
St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
You know, Missouri farmers have been doing what's best for their land for generations. After all, no one knows what it takes to feed and fuel a growing global population better than they do. So why are trial lawyers threatening Missouri farmers' best defense against weeds? Our farmers don't need to be controlled. They need to be supported. Keep glyphosate in our state. Show your support at TakeControlMissouri.com. Paid for by Modern Ag Alliance in support of Missouri farmers.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren, Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work.
Some politicians claim cockfighting is a proud tradition, but is it really something to be proud of? Cockfighting isn't just cruel to animals, it's cruel to humans. It's linked to organized criminal activity, illegal gambling, even drug trafficking. Leading law enforcement and Christian groups have spoken out and are urging a stop to the violence. But some politicians want to give cockfighters a pass. Keep cockfighting out of our state.
Thank you to tonight's sponsors of Election Night in Missouri: Preuss Foster, United Fiber, the Missouri Soybean Association, and Sun Solar. And thank you for joining us on this very historic Election Night in Missouri.
Election Night in Missouri will return after these messages.
St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
You know, Missouri farmers have been doing what's best for their land for generations. After all, no one knows what it takes to feed and fuel a growing global population better than they do. So why are trial lawyers threatening Missouri farmers' best defense against weeds? Our farmers don't need to be controlled. They need to be supported. Keep glyphosate in our state. Show your support at TakeControlMissouri.com. Paid for by Modern Ag Alliance.
Welcome back to Election Night in Missouri. On a night that Democrats haven't had a ton to be excited about, John. Looks like we can say that they were able to hold a seat in Jackson County, the Republicans targeted. Kemp Strickler would be reelected to the Missouri House of Representatives, it appears. Took an onslaught from the Republicans in with his fellow caucus member, Aaron Crossley's father, J.C. Crossley, trying to take him out on the Republican side. It looks like Kemp is going to return to Jefferson City.
And he was able to withstand probably the most creative attack this session, or this campaign, which was Kemp the Wimp.
I think that kind of stuff is great. I think it's hilarious. I think it's the kind of stuff that does work, but maybe not here. So now we're down to 5 House races out, 96, with Brad, probably the biggest name on the ballots are Brad Crist and Melanie Stinnett. Folks that I think the Republican Party has big things in store for. Brad Crist holding his own so far.
Yeah, and I would have thought, again, if there's 1, 2, or 3 races that would be the closest, I thought Brad Crist might have been in the most amount of trouble. As you pointed out before, Republicans really stole that seat. That should really be a Democrat seat.
Melanie Stinnett looks like she's trending toward winning re-election. Still a little bit too close to call. Looks like we can make a projection though. A seat the Democrats I think felt like was a bit of a reach, but definitely put out an effort in Ben Keithley in St. Louis County. The Missouri Times can now project that Ben Keithley will be reelected to the Missouri House of Representatives. That's one of those, we're talking about how they emanate, the Democrat Party grows out from the cities, right? They were trying to stretch a little far west, I think, with Ben Keithley.
I think so, and they got a pretty good recruit in Jacqueline Cotton. Ben Keithley really had to fight for this one. He filled up a lot of mailboxes. Ben Keithley has been active in a local MoDOT controversy, which really underscores the fact that he takes that constituent service piece seriously. Probably a little too close for comfort for Ben Keithley, but a re-election.
Well, I think it shows that, if I had to guess, that district is trending Democrat,
Yes.
like that central, like the pretty much the I-64, I guess UP would call it, Farty corridors out through West County. Both sides of that for a few miles is becoming more Democrat. Then you get down to Wildwood, Eureka, not quite as
Right.
much. But the trend in Ben Keithley's district is probably, while he's there, is not going to improve. I think he'll be somebody that has to run a campaign every 2 years for the next 2 terms he serves. I do think, though, it's an anomaly how the Democrats were able to reach over, lose Jamie Johnson's, win a seat in Liberty. We'll see if they weren't able to do that here. We'll see if they win Oler King, which is closer to the city and still a little bit too close to call. So right now we're down to 4 House races. As it stands right now, dead even in the House. They started with 111 to 52. Right now it's 111 to 52 with 4 out. But of the 4, you have 3 Republican seats, 1 Democrat.
Yep.
Right now, Melanie Stinnett looks to be the safest of the Republicans. Stephanie Hines up, but with a lot of the votes still out in Springfield to be counted, with Jim Robinette. Brad Christ running better than I think some folks thought. Phil Olerking holding his own in St. Louis County. And I think we can, I think Brad Christ may have, maybe getting himself a little breathing room here. Let's see what we got. A new batch of St. Louis County numbers are coming in now. And I think the Missouri Times can now project that future star of the Republican Party, Brad Christ,
Wow.
against all odds,
Yes.
against all common sense really, will be reelected to the Missouri House of Representatives. This is just the strength of the candidate and of the House Republican Campaign Committee.
I think it had a lot of money, plus a really good candidate, plus a ground game. It worked in this district.
I mean, I think if you would have sat with Ashley Ani and you would have just, like I did on the F-150 tour, I think she would have told you they're not going to lose Jamie.
Yep.
I think she'd have told you they were going to win Bill Allen. The Lonsdale one, I think that you had to be on the ground to see.
Yeah.
She did hint towards it, but I don't know that she expected it. But if you took the Lonsdale win, I think they thought they'd win Bill Allen. I think they thought they would win Oler King. I think they thought they would win Brad Christ.
Yeah.
And I think they thought they might pick up one more kind of in the schmaz like this Lonsdale
Like a Schwadron district, or
Schwadron?
one of the oddball districts.
I think
out
they
there.
truly thought those were. I really think they thought those would be close enough that they would win those with Amendment 3. But I think the story of the night is becoming that, yes, a lot of folks came in and voted for Amendment 3 and voted Republican.
Yeah, which we shouldn't be surprised by. But also, in the latest crop that just came in from St. Louis County, Phil Olerking has a razor-thin margin now against Colin Lovett. So at the first batch of
What is that?
early
What's the
votes,
numbers on that, John?
the numbers are Phil Olerking has 9,536, or 50.1%, versus 9,476, or 49.8% for Colin Lovett. Razor thin.
If you're Philip Olerking, you've got to be thanking the House Republican Campaign
Absolutely.
Committee. But if I'm him, I've got a competitive race in 2 years, right? But I do believe whatever the district probably trends, especially if Trump's in the White House, trends a little more Democrat. But at the same time, my thought would be a presidential year. This was their time to get me. Early in my time,
Absolutely.
First re-election, presidential year, some ballot initiatives that gave me a little headwind to me and a tailwind to my opponent. If Philip Olerking wins this, he probably is the last Republican there for a while, but he probably has a good bead to stay.
I think so. And you also look at the fact that Colin Lovett is a two-time candidate. Last time, Colin Lovett lost by only 181 votes. Now, if in this rematch, Colin Lovett's not able to knock him off, you got to look at it and say, well, maybe it's time for somebody else, number one. Back to your point, though, when you look at who Phil should be thanking, not only HRCC, but Americans for Prosperity came in that district. Gene Evans Group, Americans Federation for Children came in that district. And so Phil has a lot of people to thank, I think.
Well, I tell you, Americans for Prosperity, I'm not sure. Everybody credits the last part of a campaign. I think Americans for Prosperity laid the groundwork for Eric Schmidt to be able to take off.
For sure.
I really think that I had seen Americans for Prosperity get involved in races, and obviously their help was good. I think one of the reasons, if you got on the whiteboard and said, why is Eric Schmidt a United States Senator? Why is he at Mar-a-Lago right now with President Trump? Americans for Prosperity were on the doors, hitting those doors very hard, very early.
Very early.
And I think that the television and the ads and all the fun stuff we saw stood on the shoulders of that American for Prosperity door-knocking effort. They did a lot of doors, and may have came in here and won Philip Olerking his race. I wonder if we can tell how many precincts are still out in that one.
Yeah, the St. Louis County website doesn't tell us quite yet what that number is. The Missouri Secretary of State's website was only showing early voting as of just a few minutes ago.
So as of now, it's 109 to 51 with 3 out. It started with 111 to 52. It looks, if you had to look right now at where the numbers are, Philip Olerking in such a tight situation looks like he's likely to succeed and come back. It does look like Melanie Stennett's probably the safest one on this.
Yep.
She's probably going to win. Jim Robinette still could win. So imagine a scenario where Philip Olerking holds on, which seems like the likely scenario. Melanie Stennett wins, which I think we're probably about to get ready to call that one. Then Jim Robinette comes in and takes a seat. Can you imagine a world where the Republicans picked up a seat this cycle?
Absolutely not. I mean, I don't think in all the weeks this year of watching This Week in Missouri Politics, I don't think anyone sat at this desk and said that Republicans would actually gain seats. Even folks like Dallas Ernst and Hannah Beers Sutton would have told you we might lose a few.
Well, I think that even the people that walked around with the Republican tattoos on no one would have said. They would have said you lose 1, you lose 2, you lose 3. I think what we're seeing tonight in Mike Keogh's Republican Party, 2 of the top flight people that I think are going to be making the biggest difference in this party could be Hannah Sutton and Cass Anderson. I mean, I think you're seeing it tonight. If you start talking about the winners of tonight, how do you have a list of winners without prominently placing both of those very high on the list?
And as it relates to Hannah, just think in your early days, and when you go back to the 1990s, you had a young man leading HRCC named David Barklage. He ended up doing pretty well for himself.
Yeah, but his hair still looks like the day I met him. It's the frosted tip thing.
Yeah. Does David still have the frosted tips gimmick?
I think the tips took over the whole hair. Times change, but David's hair kind of hasn't yet. John, let's check in on these amendments here as we come in. I think, folks, we're going to be with you till about 10:45, and after that, we're going to wrap it up on election night in Missouri. We are staying with you though until we can make some projections here. Greene County not in any rush apparently to get their votes counted, but overall statewide 1,758 of 3,573 precincts in. Trump 5,542. So about what we thought, 12-point win. Hawley 53-44. So Kuntz single-digiting it. I mean, that's kind of where we were talking about where would Kuntz fall. I mean, right now he's on pace for single-digit loss. Kehoe 56, then 41. So Crystal Quaid is besting Nicole Galloway.
Wow. Okay.
The questions we had at the start. Does Kuntz make this a single-digit race? He's on track.
Appears to, yeah.
Probably the late vote always benefits. So if he's tied in there till he gets about 3,000, then you figure he's good. Crystal Quaid looks like she will eclipse Nicole Galloway's effort 4 years ago. David Wassinger 54. Denny Hoskins, 54, Vivek Malik, 55, and then Andrew Bailey, 56, leading the under ticket. Obviously, most of the congressional delegation, Ann Wagner, stretching her lead out a little bit now over Ray Hartman, Bob Onder, Mark Alford, Emmanuel Cleaver, Sam Graves, Eric Burles, and Jason Smith will all be easily returned to Congress. Looking in the state Senate. Of the competitive races, we look at Senate District 11, Joe Nicola. We look at 15, David Gregory has won his race. 17, Maggie Nurnberg has won her race. The 23rd, Adam Shelton. You look at potential stars 10 years from now. If I can still, if the blackmail I have on you works and you're still coming over on election night, we're going to be talking about Maggie Nurnberg.
Yep.
We're going to be talking about Curtis Gregory.
Andrew Bailey.
We're going to be talking about David Gregory, Brad Christ, some of the folks that were in some of these, Stephen Weber. The future of this state, it's always interesting to look back and see how is this state how does it move? How is it different? I think you absolutely can look. Some of the names we can see here are going to be the names we not only talk about in legislative wars, we probably talk about on the statewide ballots going forward.
And you also think, let's not forget some of the folks that lost upsets. So if you look at a Jamie Johnson, we probably haven't heard the end of a Jamie Johnson.
Yep.
We certainly haven't heard the end of a Chris Lonsdale. You know, when you look at some of these folks that are quite young, we haven't heard the end of them. And one of the elephants in the room is Crystal Quaid. We could be hearing from her in just 2 years in a state Senate race.
I would say if this continues, if she wants to do it, I mean, you can imagine. My observation of her was this. She knew what she was getting into.
Yep.
She's not a stupid person. She knew she needed to come in, move the needle a little bit forward for Democrats, which tonight, it looked like a foregone conclusion, but no other place on the ballot is movement really happening for the Democrats, except marginal movement in the governor's race. You come in, but she had a local person, a businessman, the white, Republican, heterosexual Christian male that most Democrats I know nationally say you're the problem.
Yep.
Came in, tried to buy the race out from under, made her spend all her money. I think there's a little fatigue there. I think there's a little bit easy to get discouraged in that situation. Sure. Comes in, does not get the funding, allows Mike Keogh is allowed to go focus on Amendment 3,
yep.
raise a bunch of money for that, when if the Democrats would have been funding her, he'd had to keep it home. You wouldn't have a Cass Anderson leading this multi-organizational effort. I wonder if I bet if you ask her tomorrow, she's just tired.
Yeah.
But now, 2 months from now, Christmas presents are wrapped. She's used to coming to Jeff City. I wonder if I can't talk her into coming on This Week in Missouri Politics, talking politics with me.
And in a couple of years, let's not forget that the current head of the Missouri Democratic Party is Russ Carnahan, which is not exactly a youth movement. So if you're a Democrat in Missouri, do you want to look at Crystal Quaid every day, or do you want to look at Russ Carnahan every day?
I think that's quite a fair take, and I know which one John Combest would be making memes about.
Absolutely.
Although Russ does have the good one where Mayor Slay goes, "Come on, Russ." Yeah, exactly. I've seen you use that one in the past. So where we stand right now, Amendment 2 and Amendment 3 is still too close to call. The Missouri House, 109 to 51, 3 races still out. 2 seats that Phil Olerking looks like he's going to hang on. Melanie Stinnett looks like she's going to hang on. Jim Robin and Stephanie Hine still the closest one. And then let's go down here and look at these amendments. Constitutional Amendment number 2, sports betting. Does it get closer than this? 820,000 to 832,000. The no is leading, but it's by less than 0.5%.
And that's Amendment 2?
Amendment 2. Amendment 3, 53-46. So I've noticed through this, none of the Chesterfield David Gregory seats in. None of the 11th is in places where Amendment 3 did well. I would say Amendment 2 is honestly too close to call.
Yep.
And I would say Amendment 3 is you could probably, in the same vein you think Melanie Stinnett wins in Springfield, you could probably predict Amendment 3 is on its way to passing, but by a small margin. We're getting up as we get into 10:34 tonight. We have about half the precincts to the Secretary of State's page. Not a lot of those from St. Louis County. Greene County, no one in a hurry down there. They take their time in Greene County counting ballots.
And Scott, the latest update, we got a few more votes in St. Louis County. And again, Phil Olerking continues to maintain his lead over Colin Lovett, again, by a margin less than 200 votes.
So less than 200 votes, and they don't keep track of precincts, so it's hard to tell if all the precincts are in there.
That's correct.
The Jim Robin and Stephanie Hine race, 5 of 18 precincts are in. She has about a 3-point lead. Hasn't been an update in a while in Greene County. Around the state, Judge Broniak, Judge Gooch were retained. All the members of Congress returned in Missouri. The state Senate races, we pretty much came into tonight assuming this was 20 to 21 to 10 Republicans. Schnelting won. You couldn't out of hand assume that, but you figured he would. Then Maggie Nurnberg, a name we're going to be hearing many, many times going forward. She won her race about like you thought she would against a very good Democrat versus the only Republican that I think would have made it a race at all.
Yep.
Then you have David Gregory. They threw the kitchen sink at the guy. And they threw everything they had at Gregory.
Including a lot of old allegations and people that got really upset about old court cases and whatever.
I thought it was a terrific campaign by the Democrats.
Yeah.
I think they had the right candidate. They had the money.
Yep.
They had the message.
They had the team. They had a great team.
I don't know what more you could have done to beat Gregory. Sometimes I think if you're the Democrats, you tip your hat to the other side, right?
Yep, and just say it was too good.
Then Nicola, I think Democrats will look back and say I don't think Joe Prelis could have done anything else to win that race.
Mm-hmm.
With Sauls, I guess I don't know as much about it, but I don't think it's there might have been a way around that victory. But I think the truth is, people in Chesterfield are tired of being Republicans, but not totally tired.
Mm-hmm.
And people in Independence are just done being Democrats for now. Now the question will be in Independence, are these Trump voters? Or are they Republican voters?
And there's a difference, right? You've talked about that for the last few midweek updates.
We're going to find out. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that, but we'll see as the election night unfolds here. John, I think we're about to have to wrap it up. But as it stands now, the Missouri Senate, 23-11. Pretty much what we came in with.
Yeah.
The Democrats picked up a statistical win, essentially with the maps in Boone County.
Yep.
They lost Senator Rizzo's seat, but by frankly a small margin in Jackson County. In the Missouri House, you have 3 out. I think if you just had to guess, I'd say Oler King and Stinnett come into 11, and Hine is winning, but it's gonna be tight.
If I had to pick, I would say that Oler King holds on, and that Stephanie Hine holds on. I'm going to go with the incumbents there.
How do you like a map that after all the talk, after all the abortion craziness, after the constant back and forth, after all the money, the Missouri legislature winds up the exact same? I wonder. We've got to get back in the Wayback Machine. Call Mahoney or something.
Yeah.
Call Bob Priddy and say, when is the last time the legislature didn't change?
Yeah. I don't know if that's ever happened.
I can't think of it. The state Senate obviously has.
Right.
But I can't think of a time the Senate and the House have went to the voters and they said, exactly the same.
And I also wonder how many stories we're going to see from the mainstream media where they come out and say, hey, we were actually wrong about this blue wave. Now, I'm old enough to remember 2019 when mainstream media came out and said that women, the pro-choice women, were so upset that they were going to send Nicole Galloway to the governor's mansion. That didn't happen. And then within the last year, we heard so much about this blue wave that was coming, this outrage against Missouri's draconian abortion laws.
And while it does appear as though you'd rather, in this situation, you'd rather be Amendment 3, we're getting close to, we're over half of the vote in, getting close to 60% of the precincts in. You see Amendment 3 is leading 53-46. If I had to guess, that's essentially where this ends up, right?
Yeah, because especially with Kansas City. So we'll see some pro-Amendment 3 votes come in Kansas City and in St. Louis City. So yeah, I think that margin holds or maybe expands a bit for yes on 3.
So going forward, we have Amendment 2 and Amendment 3 still out. We have those. So I guess, John, wrapping up the themes from the night. Lucas Kunce looks like he's going to keep a single-digit loss.
Yeah.
Pyrrhic victory, but not totally insignificant.
Right. Yeah, and I think the other thing is, one of the curious things about this election is Josh Hawley could have really taken his foot off the gas. When you think back to that confrontation at the state fair, that was not about building up your margin against Lucas Kunce. The reason he had a documentary
I've
crew
seen
behind
guys
him,
like that fight. It turns into a slap fight and hair pulling.
And so, but the point is, I think that the reason wasn't to run up the margin against Lucas Kunce. It was to show on a national level that this guy's a fighter. He's a tough guy. He's willing to fight in 2028, maybe 2032. That was for a national audience. So I don't think we should be surprised to see a more confrontational version of Hawley, even more going forward.
Well, I think Josh Hawley's a very good politician, very good on his feet. The fake fighting thing was a little silly.
A little much.
You know, I don't think he would undo it. It wasn't that big. Everything with Josh Hawley's a bit of a heat sinker. Everything that happens with him seems like it gets blown way out of proportion. So to me, going forward, it's a pretty simple arrangement. Hawley probably has some vulnerabilities he'll have to own, but they're not significant vulnerabilities.
Right.
Right. They're 6 years from now. He's in a great spot to be reelected. As we flip through here, one last time on election night in Missouri, let's go down the results. This is Mike Kehoe's Republican Party now. He controls all levers of it. He is by far the most popular Missouri state politician. I think Governor Parson does not get enough credit for the administration he ran, that now his lieutenant governor that he selected is taking over. And now I think this makes Parson 15-0.
Yeah,
in statewide elections of people he's selected. Hawley 53-44. So even if it is a single-digit win, it's going to be 9, 8-9, something like that. Trump up 13 in the state. That's he went to 19-16. That's about. The Missourians aren't just going to vote for you forever. They're going to get tired of you. That's the one thing we can definitely say. You have Wassinger, Hoskins, Malik all bunched in. Bailey with a little bit of a lead on them. But just percentage points. All the members of Congress are returned. The 2nd district still not this runaway district. No matter how much they cut into that, it just feels like they cannot give Ann Wagner a safe district. And I also think you take an Amy Gunn versus, let's say Ann Wagner says, I'm done with this, I'm retiring. You go run Amy Gunn against whoever would have to be right enough to win that primary.
Which would be somebody to the right.
Right. I don't see that district as anything but a toss-up district.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, you got to have the right candidates.
You have to have the perfect Democrat candidate.
Like an Amy Gunn, frankly.
Yeah.
If you have her on the ballot, then you come out of whatever comes out of that primary is probably going to be a little nuts. I think at that point you've got a significant issue. Tell you what, let's before we leave, I think we need to talk to the guy who has owned the night. We're going to hold on right here. We're going to be right back with our final thoughts and one last guest on election night in Missouri.
It's in support of Missouri farmers.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work.
Some politicians claim cockfighting is a proud tradition, but is it really something to be proud of? Cockfighting isn't just cruel to animals, it's cruel to humans. It's linked to organized criminal activity, illegal gambling, even drug trafficking. Leading law enforcement and Christian groups have spoken out and are urging a stop to the violence. But some politicians want to give cockfighters a pass. Keep cockfighting out of our state.
Thank you to tonight's sponsors of Election Night in Missouri. Preuss Foster, United Fiber, the Missouri Soybean Association, and Sun Solar. And thank you for joining us on this very historic election night in Missouri.
Election Night in Missouri will return after these messages.
St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
You know, Missouri farmers have been doing what's best for their land for generations. After all, no one knows what it takes to feed and fuel a growing global population better than they do. So why are trial lawyers threatening Missouri farmers' best defense against weeds? Our farmers don't need to be controlled. They need to be supported. Keep glyphosate in our state. Show your support at TakeControlMissouri.com. Paid for by Modern Ag Alliance in support of Missouri farmers.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond